Chapter 15. Reaching level 100. The path ahead under Lam Dong's watchful gaze, Tran Huyen suppressed his racing heartbeat and gave a nonchalant nod. "Thank you, Director." Lam Dong's eyes curved into elegant crescents, her exquisite smile seemingly enough to eclipse 100 blooming flowers. Tran Huyen quickly averted his gaze, his mind racing with calculations. Lam Dong's words had given him an idea. Why shouldn't he let his parents awaken early? Although everyone would inevitably awaken once the mythical era arrived, letting them do so now would allow him to use experience pills to nurture them. Even if the pills were limited in how far they could push someone, they would still significantly shorten the time his parents needed to level up. After all, once the global awakening occurred, raising one's professional level would require hunting exotic beasts. And how could hunting such creatures ever be without risk? He was no saint. Even from his high vantage point, he still harbored his own personal concerns. Though he had established the Mythology Special Task Force, he knew he would still have to face the early stages of the Mythical Era alone. No one truly knew how powerful the beasts would be once they fully descended. At this moment in Long Quoc, he was the only one who could guarantee the ability to slay these monsters single-handedly. Under these circumstances, the Mythology Special Task Force served only as a support unit. Since that was the case, it was only reasonable for him to reserve 2 awakening slots for his parents. Ring! Ring! Just then, Tran Huyen's phone chimed. Upon answering, the leader's voice came through from the other end. "The negotiations failed. I'm afraid it's time for you to take action." Hearing this, Tran Huyen's expression turned solemn. He said in a low voice, "Leader, I have a suggestion. The Mythology Special Task Force has just been formed. Why not let them accompany me? Consider it a live fire exercise for the troops." In truth, with Tran Huyen's current strength, infiltrating the United States to extract Tu Than Fong would be as easy as turning over his hand. As long as the opposition didn't resort to weapons of mass destruction, ordinary handguns couldn't even scratch him. Perhaps only a sniper rifle might cause some trouble, but that was assuming they could even land a hit. Very well, but do not take too many people. The goal of this trip is simply to bring the scientist, Tu Than Fong, back safely. I will say it again. Our primary enemies are not them, but the mythical era itself. Understood. After hanging up, Tran Huyen immediately led Lam Dong toward the main hall of the Mythology Special Task Force. "Assemble." The moment he stepped into the hall, Tran Huyen's resonant voice echoed throughout the space. The members, who had been huddled together in discussion, snapped to their feet and fell into formation with blistering speed. "Ha Bin Vo, Tran Din Huang, Ho Tu An. The 7 of you, follow me. The rest of you, continue studying the compendium of exotic beasts." With that, Tran Huyen turned and walked out, with Ha Bin Vo and the others hurrying to keep pace. The 7 individuals Tran Huyen had selected were all former commanders of major special forces units, and their awakened classes were all of the legendary grade. With these 7 plus himself, if they still couldn't bring Tu Than Fong back, their awakenings would have been for nothing. In terms of individual combat capability, let alone himself, even Ha Bin Vo or any of the others would be peerless if deployed alone. The United States is detaining one of our overseas students. High Command has ordered us to conduct a rescue and bring that student back to Long Quoc safely. This is the first battle since your awakening. I hope you don't give me a reason to step in. On the way to the ground base's airfield, Tran Huyen spoke to Ha Bin Vo and the others without looking back. Ha Bin Vo and his comrades exchanged glances. None of them spoke, but the killing intent and the aura of invincible confidence radiating from them explained everything. Not long after, under Lam Dong's witness, Tran Huyen's group boarded an armed helicopter and traveled to the nearest Thien Hai International Airport. Since the Mythical Extraordinary Bureau had issued its announcement, many of Long Quoc's international airports had refused foreign landings. But international flights departing from Long Quoc had not yet ceased. Most of these flights were being to transport overseas citizens who wished to return to their homeland. The plane Tran Huyen's group boarded was one such flight bound for the U.S. to pick up citizens. A few hours later, as the time in the capital approached the early hours of the morning, Tran Huyen once again received the feedback from his professional level. This time, it was 10% of his base attributes after reaching level 80. A surging power circulated through his body. Had he not prepared himself to suppress the vibrations beforehand, the entire aircraft might have been affected. 10 minutes later, sensing the titanic strength within him, Tran Huyen showed a look of pleasant surprise. At this moment, he felt as though Earth's gravity no longer applied to him. It felt as if he could walk upon the very air itself. Of course, he had no intention of testing this now. They were on a plane, after all. Any mishap would be an unnecessary headache. After receiving the feedback, Tran Huyen immediately purchased all the newly refreshed packs in the game store, including experience pill packs, awakening stone packs that could manifest reality early, and limited experience pill packs for those under level 40. Without hesitation, Tran Huyen funneled every experience pill he could use into his game character. His professional level shot up from level 80 straight to level 100. Basic level 100 was finally perfected. Tran Huyen's face was filled with joy. Since he had started this mythical game, only 3 days had passed in reality, though technically it was now the 4th day since it was past midnight. In the real world, no one could ever leap from level 1 to level 100 in just 3 short days. Though he was happy, Tran Huyen was not arrogant. Basic level 100 was merely the foundation. There were several tiers above it, and the beasts of the Mythical Era were infinitely more powerful than a basic level 100. He needed to seize the time before the game closed to continue improving. However, in the next second, a notification on his phone screen caused his expression to shift. Congratulations to player Tran Huyen for reaching level 100. You are now a mature Chaos Swordmaster. The transition from basic level 100 to the King Realm is a massive leap forward and cannot be achieved using experience pills. Furthermore, even once a player breaks through into the King Realm, experience pills can no longer be used. After the Mythical Era descends, players will no longer receive experience from killing beasts. After the King Realm, the most important factor is the comprehension of laws. Law comprehension can only rely on oneself, or the discovery of heaven-defying law treasures to advance. Hint: as a Chaos Swordmaster possessing the Chaos Sword body, you can awaken skills from all elements. Therefore, you have an innate advantage in comprehending the laws associated with your awakened professional skills. You may begin your comprehension from this direction. Before the mythical game closes, the game store will continue to refresh daily. Players may continue to purchase packs. Additionally, the game store will undergo a major update tomorrow, at which point several brand new packs will appear for purchase if needed. Seeing these notifications, Tran Huyen felt a wave of disappointment. He had originally planned to rely on the game to raise his level to Legendary Saint, or at least True King, before the Mythical Era arrived. Now it seemed that beautiful dream had vanished. Then again, it made sense. If one could advance without obstacle just by grinding mobs, the cultivation of the beasts in the Mythical Era would likely be unimaginably high. Having reached level 100, he was already a massive step ahead of everyone else. Try reading for 30 seconds. Stay happy all day long. Online games. Every skeleton I summon is a 9.2. The masterpiece online game Dawn's Breaking opens. Vuong Vien, in a moment of excitement, chooses the dead-end profession. Necromancer. Otherworld Power Fantasy 280,000 likes. Add to bookshelf greetings. Cult Leader 9.1 points. So Hu finds he is transmigrated into the world of the game. Great Jianghu, becoming. Jianghu Passionate 120,000 likes. Add to bookshelf Lords for All. My Goblins Mutated 9.1 points. A world of Lords for All, starting with Shadow Goblins. Trait Ignore species gaps. What? Your unit is a mighty giant dragon. Everything mutates. Face Slapping Passionate 540,000 likes. Add to bookshelf Brain Burning. A must-read for all. Lord of the Wheel of Fate 9.2 points. 50 years ago, the Ghost Star appeared, bringing with it an online game from another world called Heaven's Vocation. Humanity can gain power from fragments scattered across the earth. Otherworld Imaginative, 560,000 likes. Add to bookshelf. Chapter 16. We are taking you home. After a soft sigh of relief, Tran Huyen applied all the skill gift bags he had purchased to the 5 new class skills awakened after level 50. Once all were raised to level 100, he summoned his status panel and began to examine it closely. Name: Tran Huyen. Class: Chaos Swordmaster. Unique: level 100. Strength: 59,280. Due to the Dragon Emperor body talent, physical stats increased by 1,000. Constitution: 82,540. Due to Dragon Emperor body talent, physical stats increased by 700. Spirit: 116,000. Force: 60. Equipment: Zhenwu Spirit Sword, Spirit Grade Class Skills. Space: Ethereal Firmament, Sword Slash. Ice: Eternal Frost for 10,000 miles. Lightning: Divine Lightning Blade. Dark Prison Oblivion. Light: Universal Illumination. Fire: Lee Fire Calamity. Metal: Gang Metal Slash. Wood: Heavenly Wood Guanyin. Earth: Absolute Defense. Time Reversing Sword Array. All skills have reached level 100. Skills can break through once more after the player masters the corresponding laws. Class Talents: Sword Heart Lucid, Chaos Sword Domain, Dragon Emperor Body, Scarlet Flame Crucible. Zodiac Nirvana. Note: the average person's maximum strength, constitution, and spirit stats are 10 points. Looking at the character information panel, Tran Huyen nodded in satisfaction. As expected of a mythic grade hidden class, it was truly formidable. He was incredibly eager to feel the terrifying heights he would reach once his class powers were fully synchronized with reality. Unfortunately, were it not for his innate frailty, his base stats could have been even higher. However, with a wide array of skills and protective talents, it was more than enough to compensate for his natural deficiencies. Among peers of the same level, he could absolutely claim kingship without a rival. A few hours later, the flight carrying Tran Huyen's group finally landed at Los Angeles International Airport in the United States. With the support of undercover agents, the group moved quietly toward the location where Chu Thong was being held. At the same time, social media exploded once again with mockery aimed at the perceived weakness of the Long Kingdom. On Twitter, many foreigners were celebrating with biting comments. Is this the so-called Lion of the East? They were called the Sick Man of East Asia in the past for a reason. Damn! The Long Kingdom has tucked tail again. Even within the country, many voices of disappointment surfaced. However, in contrast to the netizens immersed in the virtual world, the laborers building the defense zones merely offered faint smiles upon hearing the news before immediately returning to their work. Though the time had been short, thanks to the unity of the entire nation, 34 defense zones had already begun to take shape. Indeed, when a nation spares no expense to achieve a goal, the resulting efficiency far exceeds the imagination of ordinary people. At these defense zones, workers often saw a young man leading a group, busy arranging strange stone statues around the construction sites. This young man was Deep Van Dao, who had been entrusted by Tran Huyen to establish formations across the defense zones. Many reporters standing outside the sites tried to approach Deep Van Dao for an interview, but they were all intercepted before they could get close. It could be said that the cohesion and creativity the Long Kingdom had demonstrated in recent days had shocked and unnerved the world. Precisely because of this, during this detention incident, foreign entities seized the opportunity to mock and belittle them, hoping to mask the fear in their own hearts. Among them, the manipulative hands of hostile nations were certainly at work. In a villa in Los Angeles, an elegant young man stood before a traditional ink wash painting, quietly observing it. From the outside, the villa appeared peaceful, but in reality, the entire place was under strict surveillance. In the shadows, dozens of heavily armed American soldiers stood guard. Even the most reckless terrorists would likely not dare to step foot inside. A blonde, blue-eyed woman with a fiery figure, holding 2 glasses of red wine, swiftly approached the young man. "Tu, care for a drink?" Tu Thanfang reached out to take the glass without saying a word. The woman took a sip of wine with her seductive red lips, looked at Tu Thanfang, and said softly, "Tius, why are you so insistent on returning to the Long Kingdom? Isn't it good to stay here? We have the beautiful Statue of Liberty and an atmosphere of freedom. If you only agree, you will immediately have a green card, $10 billion, and me." With such charm pressed so close, any other man might have lost control long ago. But Tu Thanfang's gaze remained as still as water. He glanced at the international superstar Lilia and replied indifferently, "I will never betray my motherland." Boom! Lilia was about to say more when a loud explosion rang out, immediately followed by the sound of rapid gunfire and shouting echoing into the villa. "Damn it! Who is that? Bastards!" Outside the villa, dozens of American soldiers were firing wildly into the darkness. Despite being equipped with infrared goggles, they still could not detect where the enemy was hiding. Whoosh! The sound of rushing wind roared. The American soldiers looked back in unison, only to see several large trees hurtling straight toward them, sending them into a panicked scramble. While they were in disarray, several figures darted through the rain of bullets with terrifying speed. Crash! The leader unleashed a ferocious punch, tearing a massive hole in the villa's outer wall. "My God! What kind of monsters are these?" Cries of shock rang out one after another. Although these soldiers were well trained, they were like small fish before those figures. As soon as they were touched, they collapsed, unable to rise again. In less than 5 minutes, the American soldiers lay strewn across the ground. Those still alive only dared to play dead, not daring to move an inch. Tran Huyen walked calmly past the bodies with his hands clasped behind his back. Ha Bingvo and the others gathered and followed closely behind him into the villa. "Damn it! Who are you?" In the villa's main hall, the few American soldiers guarding Tu Thanfang and Lilia showed clear signs of terror as they watched Tran Huyen's group enter. The leader Susi summoned his courage to shout, but his face was filled with panic. Tran Huyen ignored the soldiers and looked directly at Tu Thanfang, saying in a deep voice, "We have come to take you home." Those words caused Tu Thanfang's composure to completely crumble. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. Tears welled in his eyes, and he nodded vigorously at Tran Huyen. Thump! The moment Tu Thanfang nodded, Tran Huyen acted. He closed the distance to the American soldiers as if teleporting. They didn't even have time to fire their weapons before Tran Huyen sent them flying. "Oh, my God!" Lilia and Tu Thanfang, standing nearby, were both stunned. Lilia cried out in horror as if she had just seen a god. With a wave of his hand, Tran Huyen knocked Lilia unconscious and then decisively led Tu Thanfang away. The entire process had taken less than 10 minutes. After all, this was American territory, and they had to make use of every second. Otherwise, once the American side reacted and deployed the military or large-scale weapons of destruction, even Tran Huyen would find it difficult to withstand the assault. Chapter 17. A Calm Departure. Special Agent Kong Tuok, exiting the villa. Tran Huyen's group immediately boarded the vehicle arranged by the agents and sped toward the nearest harbor. There, a ship sat waiting, ready for departure at a moment's notice. Despite the speed of Tran Huyen's group, those watching through the surveillance monitors were certain to detect them and report their movements immediately. Once the high-ranking officials of the Star-Spangled Nation reacted, they would undoubtedly blockade the airports. Thus, they could only exploit this narrow window of time to make a hasty escape from the Star-Spangled Nation by sea. Damn it! The Long Nation is indeed devious and treacherous, daring to secretly send people here. This is a desecration of the Star-Spangled Nation. This national humiliation must be washed away with blood. Upon receiving the news, General William roared furiously inside the command center. Notify Los Angeles to blockade all routes and close the airports. Dispatch the troops immediately. Bring those wretched, yellow-skinned monkeys back to me. As soon as General William's orders were issued, The garrison stationed in Los Angeles mobilized instantly, and the police blockaded every major thoroughfare in the city. At the same time, the media in the Star-Spangled Nation caught wind of the news and began to move. Reporters with cameras appeared on main roads to broadcast live, causing social media across the entire nation to explode. My God, what on earth are those soldiers doing? They let people break right into their home. Damn it! This will be the biggest laughingstock in the history of the Star-Spangled Nation. Citizens of the Star-Spangled Nation vented their fury with words of outrage. Elsewhere, facing the blockade, Tran Huyen's group remained unfazed, charging straight ahead. Of course, this was also because they had capitalized on the time gap, departing at extreme speed before the Los Angeles police could complete their perimeter. However, by the time Tran Huyen and his comrades reached the harbor, dozens of police cars were still in hot pursuit. In the air, several armed helicopters hovered alongside the helicopters of major news agencies conducting live broadcasts. Ha Bin Vo, you and the others escort Mr. Tu onto the boat first. After stepping out of the car, Tran Huyen glanced at the police in the distance and the helicopters overhead, giving a decisive command. Captain, what about you? Ha Bin Vo and the others, including Tu and Fong, changed countenance and stared at Tran Huyen. They understood his identity and knew that his importance to the Long Nation far exceeded even that of Tu and Fong. If anything happened to him, they would be criminals in the eyes of their country. It's fine. These people cannot hold me. Execute the order. Tran Huyen waved his hand nonchalantly, barking the command in a cold voice. Hearing this, Ha Bin Vo and the others gritted their teeth and turned to lead Tu Than Fong away. Before leaving, Tu Than Fong looked intensely at Tran Huyen and said solemnly, I will wait for you on the ship. Tran Huyen smiled, no longer concerned with Tu Than Fong's group. He walked straight toward the two cars that had been smashed into scrap metal, gripped the rear of the vehicles with both hands, and suddenly exerted his strength. At the same time, the Los Angeles police chief was shouting through a megaphone. You are surrounded. If you don't want to die, drop your weapons, raise your hands, and come out peacefully. Oh my God! Damn it! As soon as he finished speaking, the officers around him began cursing and scrambling away in a panic. The chief had yet to realize what was happening, but when he looked up, his pupils constricted instantly. While he stood frozen in place, a police officer rushed over and jerked him away. Boom! The two cars slammed into the ground and exploded immediately. Flames surged into the sky, and many officers who were too slow to evade were thrown back by the shockwave. After tossing the two cars, Tran Huyen did not stop. He grabbed a nearby shipping container and hurled it directly at the armed helicopter, firing at him. The container, several meters long and weighing many tons, was as light as a pebble in Tran Huyen's hands, thrown with casual ease. This earth-shattering scene left the Star-Spangled Police completely dazed. My God! Is that Superman? Damn it! What kind of monster are we facing? Under the terrified gazes of the police and soldiers, Tran Huyen departed calmly. He stood on the deck of the ship like a god, leaving the Star-Spangled forces afraid to take a single step forward. Even the gunners on the armed helicopters subconsciously stopped firing. Just moments ago, that monster had used a container as a throwing stone, scaring the pilots so much they nearly wet themselves. Now that he was on the ship, they feared the monster might decide to simply pick up the entire vessel and hurl it at them. The helicopter pilots had no confidence that they could dodge another attack from those monstrous hands. On the ship, Ha Bin Vo and the others looked at Tran Huyen with eyes full of awe and reverence. They had thought themselves invincible after awakening, but only now did they realize that there is always a higher mountain. What was even more terrifying was that a man as powerful as Tran Huyen had not yet truly awakened. They could not imagine how strong he would become once his awakening was complete. Tu Than Fong, standing nearby, was even more fervent, his eyes fixed on Tran Huyen as if he wanted to devour him. He stepped forward excitedly, grabbing Tran Huyen's arm and asking urgently, "Are you a genetic warrior? I didn't expect the domestic biologists to have become this powerful, to be able to research and create a genetic warrior as strong as you. Tran Huyen pulled away from Chu Thanfong's grip and flashed a mysterious smile. Before long, you will know. With those words, Tran Huyen sent Chu Thanfong to his room to rest, then ordered Ha Bingvo and the others to spread out and keep watch while he entered the bridge. As soon as he stepped into the bridge, Tran Huyen paused slightly. Inside the room, 5 people in slack-skin-tight suits were pointing their guns at the star-spangled man piloting the ship. So that's how it is. Tran Huyen understood immediately. He had wondered how the agents had managed to procure such a large vessel. It turned out they had simply hijacked it. What surprised Tran Huyen was that the leader of these 5 agents was a woman. She had her hair in a ponytail, with a delicate and fair face. Her eyebrows were like brushstrokes, her nose bridge high and straight, and her figure tall. If Lam Dong possessed a mature and seductive charm, then this woman exuded a heroic and valiant air. Who would have guessed that such a beautiful woman was a special agent? Kong Tuok, Ostrich, reporting to the leader. After Tran Huyen entered, the 5 agents saluted in unison. Although they did not know his specific identity, they had received orders from their superiors. Everything must follow Tran Huyen's command, and they were absolutely forbidden from letting any harm come to him. Even if every one of them had to sacrifice their lives, Tran Huyen had to remain safe. Furthermore, they had just witnessed his inhuman strength with their own eyes. Even without those orders, they wouldn't have dared to be disrespectful. Hard work, everyone. The country has arranged for a fleet to wait in international waters. Once we clear this period, we can return home. Understood. Hearing Tran Huyen's words, the woman codenamed Kong Tuok and the others nodded in response. Once we return this time, you won't need to be special agents anymore. Before long, an unprecedented great upheaval will occur. Jobs like being a special agent will no longer be necessary. If you wish to join the military, you may. If you wish to return to a normal life, you can do that as well. After a moment of silence, Tran Huyen looked over Kong Tuok and the others, speaking in a low voice. The entire blue planet appeared peaceful on the surface, but in places where light did not reach, there were always hidden dangers beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Kong Tuok's group had to face those dangers every single second. To their country, they were deserving heroes. But to other nations, these spies and agents were hunted enemies. Once caught, even death would not come easily. Chapter 18, Global Shockwaves. Genetic warriors? What? They escaped? Useless. How could so many of you let those yellow-skinned monkeys get away? Inside the comm center, General William roared into his phone. His face flushed a deep crimson with embarrassment. For this operation, he had mobilized the entire Los Angeles police force and even deployed armed helicopters. The result? They hadn't managed to catch so much as a single hair. He could already envision the scene of the president pointing a finger at his face and berating him. But that was a minor concern. What truly troubled him was that if he could not eliminate or capture those damned people, this incident would undoubtedly become an indelible stain on his military career. At that moment, the video footage transmitted to his phone silenced him, his expression turning into one of pure astonishment. Chinese kung fu? Damn it! After a harsh curse, cold sweat broke out on General William's forehead. His vision extended far beyond that of an ordinary man. Judging by the video, the strength displayed by that individual was so immense that even the elite special forces of the United States would likely face total annihilation if they encountered him. With such terrifying individual combat capabilities, taking the head of an enemy general amidst a vast army would be as easy as reaching into a pocket for a coin. Why was the Dragon Kingdom hiding an inhuman monster like this? What was their ultimate goal? Connecting this to the series of actions taken by the Dragon Kingdom in recent days, General William could no longer sit still. His expression turned savage as he barked, "We must detain this group at any cost. Notify the first detachment of the Raptor Special Forces. Order them to sortie immediately. The Raptor Squadron was the most advanced aerial force of the United States, equipped with F-15 Eagles, F-16s, and F-22 Raptors, all outfitted with AIM-120 missiles. They were an aerial combat unit with extreme firepower and state-of-the-art equipment. Following General Williams' command, several majestic fighter jets roared into the blue sky from a secret base, heading straight for Tran Huyen's vessel. At the same time, a colossal fleet was anchored in international waters. Inside the command room of the flagship, hundreds of Dragon Kingdom military observers were using satellites to track Tran Huyen's ship every second. Also present in the command room was a handsome middle-aged man in a deep green military uniform. 2 gold stars sat upon his shoulders. He was the commander of this fleet, Vice Admiral Hoang Fu Fo Trung. Report: 5 F-15s, 3 F-16s, and 1 F-22 are intercepting the Myth vessel. Estimated distance is 150 nautical miles. Hearing this, Hoang Fu Fo Trung's face darkened. It's the Raptor detachment. Faced with such a critical matter, Hoang Fu Fo Trung did not dare to make a unilateral decision. He took out a secure phone and dialed the top-tier red hotline. Wait a little longer. Have faith in him. You only need to remember one thing. Protect Comrade Tran Huyen at any cost, even if you have to cross into international waters. Do not hesitate. Understood. Hearing the voice from the phone, Hoang Fu Fo Trung responded solemnly, his tiger-like eyes flashing with a brilliant light. On the other side, as the small detachment closed in, Tran Huyen sensed something unusual in the sky. He stepped out of the cabin and stood by the railing, narrowing his eyes as he looked up at the high heavens. Behind him stood Ha Bin Vo, Kong Tuok, and the others. Gradually, the silhouettes of the fighter jets emerged from behind the clouds. Their imposing, formidable frames caused the pupils of Ha Bin Vo's group to contract sharply. "Captain, jump now!" In the next second, the expressions of Ha Bin Vo's group changed drastically as they shouted in unison. In the sky above, warheads trailing streaks of fire descended toward them like falling stars. No one expected the United States to be so ruthless, firing directly without a single word of warning. It was a clear message. If they couldn't have him, no one would. The sensation of extreme danger left Tran Huyen no time for second thoughts. He moved instantly. He had currently received 3 attribute feedbacks, with the third bringing his class level up to level 80. Although he only possessed 1/10 of the base attributes, it was enough to push his strength index past 1500 red, while his constitution and spirit indices were even higher. Under the weight of such monstrous stats, the gravity of Earth seemed to lose its hold on him. While he hadn't reached the level of true flight, leaping and momentarily pausing in mid-air was no longer a problem. Tran Huyen appeared in the sky like a shifting shadow, delivering a powerful roundhouse kick to an incoming warhead. Boom! The warhead was instantly sent flying by Tran Huyen, crashing into the distant sea and creating a terrifying explosion. Following this, Tran Huyen's figure flickered repeatedly as he kicked away every single warhead. Consecutive explosions erupted across the sea, the powerful shockwaves throwing up towering columns of water. Tran Huyen's ship rocked violently, appearing as if it might capsize at any moment. After knocking away the warheads, Tran Huyen's figure blurred and reappeared on the ship. He reached out and dismantled the flagpole with his bare hands, then threw it with all his might. The sheer force of the throw caused the surrounding air to crackle and pop. An F-15 fighter jet, unable to dodge in time, was pierced through by the flagpole and exploded like a firework in the sky. From the moment Tran Huyen acted until the F-15 was destroyed, less than a minute had passed. Whether it was Ha Bin Vo's group on the ship, Hoang Fu Fo Trung's group on the giant fleet, or even General William watching the live feed, everyone stood frozen like statues. The pilots flying the jets were even more terrified, their souls nearly departing their bodies. Damn it! How can such a monster exist? Seeing Tran Huyen standing on the ship, preparing to launch another flagpole, the pilots didn't hesitate. They immediately pulled up to gain altitude, not even daring to remain within his line of sight. Simultaneously, at the White House, high-ranking officials watching the battle via satellite gulped, their faces turning pale. Under Tran Huyen's terrifying threat, this pursuit was destined to become a laughingstock. Several hours later, under the protection of the Dragon Kingdom fleet, Tran Huyen's group returned home safely. However, they were unaware that the internet was currently boiling over like a massive tide. The cause was a report posted on Twitter by a top media outlet from the United States. Breaking news. Scientist Qiu Thanfong has been abducted by a mysterious group. Are these genetic warriors or practitioners of Dragon Kingdom Kung Fu? The report was accompanied by a video of Tran Huyen displaying his divine prowess at the harbor. Oh my God! Is this Superman? The mysterious Dragon Kingdom has finally revealed its claws. The ancient Eastern nation possesses all sorts of unbelievable abilities. Lord, he's throwing a car like it's a brick. As soon as the report was released, it fermented for nearly 10 hours before spreading globally. The Dragon Kingdom once again became the focus of the world's attention, and even the domestic population was shaken. Has the state been secretly letting us practice cultivation? Nonsense. Have faith in science. This must be a genetic warrior developed by our country. Beyond the shock, the netizens of the Dragon Kingdom were immensely proud, celebrating wildly on Twitter. On the other hand, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dragon Kingdom issued a statement regarding the incident. Our country feels deep sympathy for the United States as being attacked by terrorists. However, we are heartened that these terrorists still possessed a shred of conscience and safely returned our scientist Qiu Thanfong to his home. What do you mean, terrorists? As soon as this statement was released, not only foreigners but even the domestic citizens were somewhat dazed, lying through one's teeth. Cough, cough. That's right, they were terrorists. Fortunately, the footage of Tran Huyen kicking warheads was not made public. Otherwise, the public outcry would have been even greater. Chapter 19. Natal Divine Armament, Enlightenment Meditation Cushion. While the nations of the world were still in a state of turmoil over the terrorist element incident in the Star-Spangled Country, the culprit himself, Tran Huyen, was at the Dongfang base, overseeing the awakening of the latest batch of members for the Mythic Special Forces. Previously, while on the flight to the Star-Spangled Country, Tran Huyen had once again purchased the Awakening Stone gift pack that could be manifested into reality early. As before, this pack was limited to 3 purchases, each containing a single Awakening Stone sufficient for 100 people. After more than 2 hours, the 300 new members of the Mythic unit had successfully completed their awakening. Compared to the first batch, this group only produced 5 individuals with legendary classes. But in exchange, the number of rare classes was slightly higher. Due to the limited supply of experience pills, Tran Huyen did not allow the second batch of members to use them immediately. Instead, he concentrated all the available pills on the 300 members of the first batch. This allowed their class levels to rise to level 30, while the 10 individuals with legendary classes reached level 40. By this point, excluding Tran Huyen, the Dragon Nation possessed 600 Special Forces personnel who had undergone early awakening. Notably, in this round of awakening, Tran Huyen's secretary, Lam Dong, also secured a spot. The class she awakened caused even Tran Huyen to momentarily freeze in surprise. Holy Light Swordsman, a legendary class belonging to the Light and Sword systems, possessing an extremely strong innate comprehension of both. Within the first 100 basic levels, experience points gained from killing exotic beasts are increased by 70%. This class is both combat-oriented and support-oriented, capable of both attacking and healing. After encouraging the new members of the Mythic unit, Tran Huyen threw them a copy of the Encyclopedia of Exotic Beasts for study and returned to his private quarters. The round trip to the Star-Spangled Country had taken over 20 hours. Combined with the 2 hours spent on the new members' awakening, it was now close to midnight. Tran Huyen prepared himself to receive the final wave of feedback from the first 100 basic levels. Boom! As the clock struck 12, the level 100 feedback arrived exactly as promised. A vast power, like a pouring galaxy, descended to envelop Tran Huyen's entire body, reconstructing his physique. Under this formidable power, the space surrounding him seemed to warp visibly to the naked eye. It took nearly 20 minutes for the commotion in the room to subside. Having accepted the full feedback of level 100, Tran Huyen's basic attributes had undergone a metamorphosis. Strength 5,928, Constitution 8,254, and Spirit 11,646. At this moment, Tran Huyen felt an unprecedented power. Earth's gravity had completely lost its effect on him. He could now tread upon the air as if he were a character in a Cultivation novel. Furthermore, a Constitution stat exceeding 8,000 made his physical defense and vitality terrifyingly high. Now, even a sniper rifle could not harm him, and even light missiles would prove useless against his person. After adapting to his surging power, Tran Huyen picked up his phone and opened the game mall with great anticipation. He wanted to see what kind of gift packs would appear in this major update of the store. The standard packs like Experience Spills and Awakening Stones remained unchanged, but several new gift packs had been added. Chaos Swordsman's upgradable Natal Divine Armament Pack includes sword, armor, and boots, price 5 billion. Enlightenment Pack contains one meditation cushion that can be manifested early. This cushion lasts for only 2 days. While seated upon it, comprehension is increased 100-fold. Price 3 billion. Special Gift Pack contains the locations of all awakening stones, appearing across the territory of the Dragon Nation during the first 3 days after the Mythic Era begins. Price 10 billion. Note: the number of awakening stones that appear depends on the total population, territorial area, and the intensity of the spiritual energy recovery of that nation. Seeing the 3 newly updated gift packs, Tran Huyen did not hesitate to call Lam Dong, instructing her to transfer 30 billion into his card. Since beginning his cooperation with the state, the funds Tran Huyen received from the government were primarily used to purchase game packs. Moreover, he documented every expenditure in detail, compiling them into reports for his superiors. Perhaps the state did not care much for the records, but Tran Huyen insisted on doing what was necessary. This was also why he did not ask Lam Dong to transfer a massive sum all at once. In the past, Tran Huyen might have pursued wealth, but since learning that the Mythic Era was about to descend, his mind was no longer set on money. After all, at his level, money had ceased to have any meaning. Protecting the safety of the Dragon Nation was what he should think about and do. Otherwise, he would fail the trust the nation had placed in him. Of course, a little bit of self-interest now and then was no cause for concern. After receiving the transfer from Lam Dong, Tran Huyen decisively bought all the gift packs in the mall, the most important being the 3 new ones. The Chaos Swordsman's Natal Divine Armament could enhance his raw strength, while the Enlightenment Pack would help him break into the King Realm in a short amount of time. What did a 100-fold increase in comprehension mean? One must realize that Tran Huyen's spirit attribute had already surpassed 10,000. With such a staggering spirit stat, his innate comprehension already far exceeded that of ordinary people. If it were increased by another 100 times, Tran Huyen could hardly imagine how terrifying his insight would become. Originally, breaking into the King Ram in such a short period would have been fundamentally impossible. But with a 100-fold increase in comprehension even for just 2 short days, Tran Huyen had the confidence to succeed. However, if he wanted to use the Enlightenment meditation cushions to break through, he would have to wait until all the class feedback from the game was complete. Although Tran Huyen currently possessed basic stats strong enough to baffle ordinary people, he had not yet gained the comprehension of the laws of his class, such as space and frost. Only when he received the full feedback and built upon the class's existing insights could he integrate everything and achieve a profound understanding of the power of laws. The special gift pack would allow the Dragon Nation to quickly locate awakening stones, thereby helping more people awaken. Otherwise, relying on manual searches alone would be far from easy. Early the next morning, Tran Huyen rose very early. He first went to the office to instruct Lam Dong to have Lam Kien Giep continue selecting new members for the Mythic Special Forces from various military regions, and then he proceeded with Lam Dong to the briefing room. Today was August 30, 2025, by the Dragon Nation calendar. There were only 2 days left before the Mythic Era officially began. The meeting Tran Huyen was about to attend was the first General Assembly since the establishment of the Mythic Bureau of Extraordinary Affairs. Previously, the meetings he had participated in were only high-level briefings. This was also the first time Tran Huyen, in his capacity as the director of the Mythic Bureau of Extraordinary Affairs, would make his official public debut before the entire Bureau staff. This General Assembly was intended for the various subunits to report on their progress and to deploy the detailed plans for the next 2 days. Dressed in a sharp military uniform, Tran Huyen looked heroic and imposing, his bright, piercing eyes seemingly capable of drawing people in. As he and Lam Dong stepped into the vast meeting hall, the eyes of everyone in the room converged upon him. Scanning the room, there were hundreds of people present, many of whom were figures who frequently appeared on television broadcasts. Chapter 20. If you want war, then war it shall be. When Tran Huyen and Lam Dong entered, everyone in the conference room rose in unison, facing Tran Huyen with a sharp military salute. Many who had never met Tran Huyen before could not hide their astonishment. They had never imagined that the mysterious director of the Bureau of Mythological Anomalies would be so young. Under the collective gaze of the crowd, Tran Huyen walked toward the director's seat on the high rostrum and sat down, with Lam Dong standing directly behind him. At this moment, the rostrum was filled with the high-ranking leadership of the Bureau. To Tran Huyen's left sat Deputy Director Lam Kien Giep. To his right was Lu Dich Sinch, head of the Weapons Research Group and former president of the Long Kwok Academy of Sciences. In addition, there were over a dozen other high-level officials, including the heads of the Construction Group, the Network Observation Group, the Foreign Affairs Group, and the Internal Cleaning Group. Everyone, let us warmly welcome the cabinet leaders attending this plenary session of the Bureau of Mythological Anomalies. Tran Huyen pressed a button on the remote on the table and stood up, clapping toward the projection screen. Immediately, every member of the Bureau followed suit, their applause filling the room. On the screen, the images of several cabinet leaders appeared. They were participating in this meeting via a secure video link. You have all worked hard. Let us begin. Upon hearing this, Tran Huyen's expression turned solemn. He spoke immediately. Groups, begin your reports. The head of the construction group stood up, stepped onto the rostrum, and addressed the assembly in a resonant voice. Respected cabinet leaders, Director Tran, good morning. Following. Currently, all 34 defense zones of Long Kwok are over 70% complete. Before the great upheaval arrives, the construction group will carry out the will of the central government to the letter, perfectly completing all 34 defense zones to present the most flawless report to the people and the state. Following him, the Network Observation Group, the Weapons Research Group, and others took their turns. The entire meeting lasted for 3 hours. During this session, the Bureau of Mythological Anomalies reported its progress to the cabinet leaders while providing summaries and directions for improvement, striving to forge an impregnable shield for Long Kwok before the great change descended. After the meeting, Tran Huyen and Lam Dong went to the training grounds of the Mythic Special Forces to conduct the awakening for the 298 newly recruited members, followed by the distribution of experience pills. To Tran Huyen's surprise, among these new members were several special agents who had assisted them in the Star-Spangled Nation previously. Among them, the most outstanding was a woman codenamed Kong Tuok. She had awakened a legendary grade hidden profession, the Dark Blade Master. Dark Blade Master, a darkness attribute blade-wielding class. Upon awakening, the user gains a legendary grade Dark Blade Constitution, possessing an innate affinity for sensing the way of the Dark Blade. Darkness attribute skill power is increased by 50%, within the base level range of 100. Experience gained from slaying exotic beasts is increased by 70%. After encouraging the members of the Mythic Special Forces, Tran Huyen boarded a standard domestic car with Lam Dong at the wheel to return to his ancestral home in Hangzhou. Only 2 days remained until the dawn of the Mythic Era. Tran Huyen returned this time for 2 reasons. First, to help his parents awaken their professions, and second, to reunite with his family. Once the Mythic Era began, he would be fighting on the front lines and would have virtually no time to spend with them. At the same time, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Long Kwok held a press conference, issuing an announcement that shocked the world once more. In 12 hours, Long Kwok will initiate a national lockdown. Embassies of all nations must withdraw immediately. Overseas Chinese wishing to return must also make haste. Furthermore, all unrelated foreign nationals are advised to depart Long Kwok swiftly. After 12 hours, anyone who does not comply will be forcibly removed, except for foreign nationals who have shown goodwill toward Long Kwok, those who have worked here long-term and started families, scientists who have contributed to the nation, or those who have naturalized as citizens. All others shall be considered unrelated foreigners. After the borders are closed, the military will be dispatched to guard them. Any unauthorized intruders will be shot on sight. The moment this news was released, it garnered countless comments and likes within seconds. Long Kwok's netizens were beyond ecstatic. This is staggering. Long Kwok has finally stopped being silent. Before, it was always others driving our people out. Now it's finally our turn to expel foreigners. This is so satisfying. I have no regrets being born in Huaxia in this life. In contrast to the excitement of the people of Long Kwok, the leaders of various nations fell into a state of panic and silence. No matter how much they did not want to admit it, they could not hide the fact that Long Kwok was the world's second-largest economy. Once Long Kwok closed its borders, it would deal a fatal blow to all countries, especially those with assets and industries there. Losing a market as massive as Long Kwok would cause the assets of many foreign companies to evaporate by at least half, if not more. When Long Kwok was silent, no one took them seriously. But when Long Kwok erupted, the entire world trembled. This news from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs topped the hot search list on Weibo. And the dozen news items below it were all related to this event. No one knew exactly what Long Kwok intended to do. Numerous countries sent spies to probe their motives, but in the end, every attempt was like a stone sinking into the ocean, failing to cause even a ripple. This time, the unwavering resolve of Long Kwok did not just amaze its own citizens. It shook the people of the entire world. After an emergency meeting of world leaders, the Western nations, led by the Star-Spangled Nation, issued a grave statement. We call upon Long Kwok not to act on impulse. Embassies are symbols of global peace. If Long Kwok deliberately uses force to expel personnel, it will destroy global peace and lead to irreparable consequences. After issuing this statement, the world leaders looked at each other and sneered. They did not believe Long Kwok had the courage to oppose the entire world. Long Kwok's words about a national lockdown would soon become a laughingstock. Truthfully, if it weren't for the pressure from the financial conglomerates behind them who feared losing the massive market, they would have hoped for Long Kwok to lock itself away and wither. Less than 10 minutes later, the response from Long Kwok's Ministry of Foreign Affairs left everyone speechless. If you want war, then war it shall be. The Star-Spangled Nation, the Cherry Blossom Nation, other Western nations. Fuck! What on earth does Long Kwok think it's doing? At this moment, the sheer defiance of Long Kwok left many Western leaders both enraged and terrified. Ever since that damned Bureau of Mythological Anomalies appeared, everything had spiraled out of control. A nation like Long Kwok, famous for its love of peace, was being this aggressive. One had to understand that Long Kwok had never before uttered words capable of triggering a world war. What was happening to this world? While the globe was in an uproar over Long Kwok actions, Tran Huyen had leisurely arrived back at his home. Seeing Tran Huyen return with Lam Dong, the smile on his mother's face, Diep Tu Tin, was brighter than a blooming flower. She pulled Lam Dong's hand and sat her down on the sofa, asking after her with such warmth and concern that even Tran Huyen was ignored. "Well done, son." Tran Huyen's father, Tran Lu Quan, patted him lightly on the shoulder, his face filled with satisfaction. Chapter 21. Alchemy and enchanting old Tran. Stop it. She is my secretary, Lam Dong. Tran Huyen rolled his eyes helplessly, offering a quick explanation to Tran Lu Quan. It was undeniable that Tran Huyen held a favorable impression of Lam Dong. But the impending situation did not allow him the luxury of romance. At the very least, until the Dragon Kingdom was completely stable and strong enough to withstand the mythological era, he would likely not devote any heart or soul to such matters. Get lost, son. Find a better excuse. Do you think your father spent 10 years in the military just playing around? You are just a rookie. Would the country really equip you with a secretary? Are you still dreaming? As soon as Tran Huyen finished speaking, Tran Lu Quan let out an irritated scold and even got physical, giving Tran Huyen a smack on the head. This action caused Lam Dong, who was sitting restlessly on the sofa, and the national personnel secretly protecting the couple, to skip a beat. Looking across the entire Dragon Kingdom, no one else, save for these two, would dare treat the director of the Bureau of Mythological Anomalies in such a manner. Old Tran, since you've put it that way, your son won't bother acting anymore. I'm laying my cards on the table. I, Tran Huyen, am the director of the Bureau of Mythological Anomalies. When Tran Huyen uttered those words, not only was Tran Lu Quan stunned, but even Diep Tu Tin, who was holding Lam Dong's hand and asking after her health on the sofa, was dazed. Their first reaction was one of sheer alarm. This boy, did he really dare to say anything? Before Tran Lu Quan and Diep Tu Tin could react, Tran Huyen clapped his hands. Immediately afterward, the couple watched as two soldiers, equipped with live ammunition, carried a large block of stone into their private room. After placing the stone in the living room, the two soldiers gave a military salute to their son. Mission accomplished. We await the commander's orders. Withdraw immediately. Yes, sir. Until the two soldiers departed, Tran Lu Quan and his wife remained in a state of bewilderment. Had Tran Lu Quan not served in the military and recognized at a glance that the firearms those soldiers carried were the real deal, he would have suspected Tran Huyen of hiring actors to deceive him. What was going on? Had his son become a commander the moment he joined the army? Was this a joke? In this world, no parents did not wish for their child to become a dragon among men. Tran Lu Quan and his wife hoped for Tran Huyen to achieve success. But the problem was, Tran Huyen hadn't just become a dragon, he had ascended to the heavens. Though Tran Huyen had only been transmigrated for 3 years, possessing the memories of the original host who had long lived at the bottom of the family hierarchy under the authority of his parents, he felt a secret sense of satisfaction seeing their stunned expressions. Satisfaction aside, business had to be done. The playfulness vanished from Tran Huyen's face. He sat solemnly on the sofas and spoke to his reeling parents. What I am about to tell you is currently the highest secret of the Dragon Kingdom. Once you have heard it, keep it in your hearts and do not speak of it to anyone. In 2 days, the blue planet will undergo a total transformation. You will see the specifics of that change when the time comes. At that moment, if the country issues any measures, you must follow instructions. I have returned this time, first to be with you, and second to have you awaken your classes. A so-called classes. Throughout Tran Huyen's explanation, Tran Lu Quan and his wife were in a state of listening to a foreign tongue, their faces blank with incomprehension. Like a machine, under Tran Huyen's guidance, Tran Lu Quan placed his palm upon the awakening stone in the center of the living room. Boom. Barely 10 seconds later, a brilliant pillar of golden light exploded from the awakening stone, causing the usually calm Tran Huyen and Lam Dong to bolt upright, staring fixedly at Tran Lu Quan, who was now enveloped in the light. Holy crap! My old man actually awakened a mythological class? Tran Huyen was utterly stunned. Although he wanted his parents to awaken early, he hadn't harbored massive expectations. After all, Old Tran and Old Deep were no longer young. Having them awaken early was meant to give them a slight head start and improve their physical constitutions. But Tran Huyen never expected that Old Tran, who was nearly 50, would awaken a mythological grade class. This was only the second mythological class awakener in the entire Dragon Kingdom to date. It wasn't just Tran Huyen and Lam Dong who were dazed. Tran Lu Quan himself was in shock. At this moment, he could clearly feel a vast source of powers flowing through his body, as well as a flood of professional insights filling his mind. In his nearly 50 years of life, this was the first time he had encountered something so fantastical. Anyone would be stunned in his place. Old Tran, what class did you awaken? As the light dissipated, Tran Huyen rushed forward, grabbing Tran Lu Quan's arm and asking excitedly, Mythological grade, hidden class, enchanter. Tran Lu Quan replied subconsciously, enchanter, a lifestyle type mythological hidden class, capable of performing enchantments on all non-living items. The power of the enchantment is proportional to the practitioner's level and their comprehension of the enchanting arts. Hearing this, a sharp light flashed in Tran Huyen's eyes. Initially, he had wanted his parents to stay safely in the rear, but now it seemed that might not be possible. A mythological grade enchanter held immense significance for the Dragon Kingdom today. To look no further than the present, simply adding defensive attributes to the walls of the 34 defensive zones would make them significantly sturdier, increasing the probability of resisting the devastation of mutated beasts. Tran Huyen pulled the dazed Tran Lu Quan down to sit, then spoke to Deep Tu Tin, who was also standing stunned nearby. Old Deep, you go and awaken as well. Huh. Oh, all right. Deep Tu Tin snapped back to her senses, gave a nod, and stepped toward the awakening stone. She took several deep breaths before placing her palm on it. A minute later, the brilliant golden pillar of light descended once more, completely enveloping Deep Tu Tin. My God! This time, even Lam Dong couldn't help but let out a soft curse. She looked at Tran Huyen, then at Tran Lu Quan, and Deep Tu Tin shrouded in light, feeling an overwhelming sense of speechlessness. What kind of celestial beings were in this family? A family of 3. And every single one had awakened a mythological grade class. If she hadn't known the truth, she would have suspected Tran Huyen of secretly manipulating the results. Once the light faded, Tran Huyen excitedly stepped forward to ask again. Mythological grade, hidden class, alchemist, a lifestyle type mythological hidden class, refines all types of pills. The class inheritance automatically includes all varieties of pill recipes. At this point, Tran Huyen did not know what words to use to describe his mood. Not only were the classes his parents triggered both mythological hidden classes, but they were both roles of extreme utility to the nation. Of course, compared to the enchanter, the alchemist's current utility was not yet as great, because the spiritual energy on the blue planet had not yet recovered. Spiritual herbs had not been born, so naturally, pills could not be refined. But in the future, the impact of an alchemist would certainly not be inferior to an enchanter. It might even surpass it. After all, an enchanter could only target weapons or protective gear, whereas the pills refined by an alchemist could enhance a person's overall comprehensive strength. For instance, healing pills, experience pills, strength pills, and so on. These types of pills would undoubtedly be extremely scarce commodities in the future. Chapter 22. Guarding the defense zones. After both Old Tran and Old Deep had completed their awakening, Tran Huyen produced the experience pills he had been holding back, handed them to the couple, and told them to consume them immediately, under Tran Huyen's protection. Their leveling process proceeded with remarkable smoothness, devoid of any complications. Their professional levels quickly reached level 40. The sudden surge in their physical and mental attributes caused the appearances of Old Deep and Old Tran to transform almost entirely. The crow's feet on Old Deep's face vanished without a trace, and her long hair, which had been somewhat dry and brittle, became dark and lustrous. She looked as though she had aged backward by 10 years. If Old Deep were to walk down the street with Lam Dong now, onlookers would likely mistake them for sisters. Upon seeing her transformation in the mirror, Old Deep beamed like a child. As it turned out, no woman could resist the temptation of beauty. Ahem, Mr. Tran, Madam Deep, we are discussing official business here. Please come and sit down. Watching the couple seemingly glued to one another as they admired the changes, Tran Huyen was forced to clear his throat. Considering you helped this old lady regain her youth, I shall overlook your insolence today, Deep Tu Tin remarked, casting a sidelong glance at Tran Huyen. Despite her words, she obediently pulled old Tran over to the sofa. Tran Huyen's lips twitched, his face filled with speechlessness. He felt as though things had veered off course. He had expected Deep Tu Tin to be shocked by her professional awakening, or perhaps stunned by his true identity and power. Instead, she seemed entirely preoccupied with the fact that she was younger and more beautiful. Old Deep was truly superficial. Tran Huyen shook his head, pushing Deep Tu Tin's antics aside. His expression turned solemn as he spoke to the couple with great gravity. I, Tran Huyen, in my capacity as director of the Mythical Special Bureau, hereby appoint Comrade Tran Lu Quan as the head of the Enchantment Division, and Comrade Deep Tu Tin as the head of the Alchemy Division of the Mythical Special Bureau. As Tran Huyen's voice fell, both Tran Lu Quan and Deep Tu Tin were stunned. It wasn't that they doubted Tran Huyen's identity. From the moment they had awakened their professions, any lingering skepticism regarding his previous claims had vanished. It was simply that moving from ordinary civilians to heads of the most mysterious organization in Long Country was a jarring transition. At the same time, they worried whether Tran Huyen's decision to appoint them would be viewed as nepotism, potentially damaging his reputation and standing. This is an order. The couple began to speak, but they stopped when they saw Tran Huyen's face harden. His gaze was piercing, carrying an authority that brooked no defiance. It caused Tran Lu Quan and his wife, who had raised Tran Huyen since he was a small child, to feel a subconscious tremor of awe. Understood, Chief. As a veteran of 10 years, Tran Lu Quan instinctively stood at attention and offered Tran Huyen a crisp military salute. Secretary Lam, establish the Alchemy and Enchantment Divisions immediately. Once the two had accepted their roles, Tran Huyen turned to give instructions to Lam Dong, who stood nearby. Understood. Following the moments of gravity, the family atmosphere returned to its warm state. Or, to be precise, Old Tran, Old Deep, and Lam Dong gathered together in happy conversation, while Tran Huyen, the biological son, was completely ignored. After a hearty dinner at home, Tran Huyen did not stay the night. Instead, he escorted Old Tran and Old Deep back to the Dongfeng base, the headquarters of the Mythical Special Bureau. 2 hours later, the group arrived. Tran Huyen instructed Lam Dong to take Old Deep to select her living quarters, while he led Old Tran to the newly established office of the Enchantment Division. Several young men waiting in the office stood straight the moment they saw Tran Huyen enter, their faces etched with excitement. Greetings, Chief. Tran Huyen returned the salute and pointed to Tran Lu Quan. From this day forward, this is your division head, Tran Lu Quan. Your first mission is to coordinate with the division head and proceed to the 34 defense zones to enchant every city wall stationed there. Turning to Tran Lu Quan, Tran Huyen added, Old Tran, the mission is heavy and time is short. Discuss the coordination with them and depart immediately. I understand. Seeing that they were ready, Tran Huyen left them to their planning. Long Country Standard Time, August 30th, 21. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Long Country issued its latest declaration. Long Country is officially entering a state of national lockdown. 10 minutes later, the second public bulletin from the Mythical Special Bureau was broadcast. At 09 on August 31, 2025, of the Long Country calendar, a total of 6,800,000 troops are scheduled to be deployed across the 34 defense zones within the territory of Long Country. It is estimated that each defense zone will be garrisoned by 200,000 troops. All major defense zones are to organize and implement the relevant deployment tasks. With the release of these two announcements, Long Country and the entire world were shaken once more. I've never seen anything like this in my life. What massive event is the country preparing for? Follow instructions. Trust the state. Tianhai Defense Zone has received the order. Hangzhou Defense Zone has received the order. With an unprecedented level of public attention, these two bulletins pushed aside all other trending news to claim the top spots. Even on international social media, netizens from various countries were in an uproar. Many foreigners who had lost their jobs due to Long Country closing its borders lashed out with vitriol. They cursed not only Long Country but their own governments as well, to vent their frustrations. Simultaneously, other nations were put on high alert by Long Country's actions. One had to realize that many countries, even the world's leading military power, the United States, possessed standing armies that did not reach 6 million. Some struggled to reach even half that number. And those were only the public figures. What about the secrets? Those damn yellow-skinned people. From this moment on, focus all efforts on monitoring Long Country's movements. All major bases are to enter a state of martial law, ready for war at any moment. Inside the White House, the white-haired president was so enraged he stomped his feet, shouting curses while issuing orders to high-ranking military officials. The Prime Minister of the Land of Cherry Blossoms also called an emergency meeting. During this session, the Prime Minister was fuming, but any discerning observer could detect the underlying panic in his eyes. Baka, Long Country is far too wicked. Contact our big brother. Request immediate aid. If Long Country intends to trigger a world war, they will certainly use us to draw the first blood. While the American president met with his cabinet, he also ordered the spokesperson for the State Department to call on Long Country to cease its military activities and refrain from starting a global conflict. Other nations immediately followed suit, echoing the same demands. However, Long Country acted as though it were deaf, completely disregarding their outcries. This was destined to be a restless night. Even within Long Country, many people tossed and turned, unable to sleep. They forced themselves to trust their nation. Yet they could not suppress the gnawing anxiety in their hearts. Yet, perhaps no one could have guessed that the war Long Country was about to initiate was not directed at other nations at all. The following day, as the first light of dawn broke, the major defense zones were already swarming with bloggers and large media outlets. Some people even bickered over the best spots to set up their cameras. A myriad of cameras and recording equipment lined both sides of the defense zone passages, accompanied by the deafening clamor of the crowd. Many local residents had also risen early to gather and watch. With 200,000 troops guarding each defense zone, the sheer majesty of the sight was something no one, save for the older generation who had lived through war, had ever witnessed firsthand. More than a few business owners arrived at their offices that morning only to find them empty, with not a single employee in sight. Chapter 23, where the spear points, the enemy shall perish. Welcome, viewers, to the Sky Sea livestream. I am your host, Manhua. On the rooftop of a skyscraper within the Sky Sea Defense Zone, the lovely and charming Manhua stood before the camera, beaming with a radiant smile. Manhua, move aside quickly. We want to see the army moving in. Dense waves of comments nearly obscured the screen. Although it was still early, the number of viewers waiting in the live stream was beyond count. The Sky Sea channel alone had millions of viewers, not to mention the countless other streamers surrounding the area. As the world waited in anticipation, time slipped quietly by, quickly reaching the scheduled hour for deployment. Rumble, whether it was the streamers on site or the audience watching online, everyone stood on their tiptoes in expectation. Suddenly, thunderous roars erupted as the ground began to tremble incessantly. Countless camera lenses pivoted simultaneously toward the distance to capture the scene. In the next moment, a sight appeared that sent a shockwave through millions of citizens of the Dragon Nation, making their blood boil with fervor. At the far end of the road, Type 99A main battle tanks and Type 04A infantry fighting vehicles were lined up like a massive winding dragon, slowly advancing toward the Sky-Sea defense zone. Following closely behind these overlords of the earth was a vast convoy of transport vehicles filled with soldiers. The procession stretched on endlessly, with no end in sight to the naked eye. The majestic scene left those present profoundly exhilarated. Streamers stood before their cameras, talking incessantly as they introduced the military hardware to their audiences. It was clear that to prepare for this live stream, they had painstakingly researched the army's composition in the Dragon Nation. In truth, it was not only the citizens of the Dragon Nation who were paying attention. Foreign leaders were also monitoring the deployment via satellite. Compared to the citizens who only saw a single corner, the foreign leaders observing the panoramic view of the Dragon Nation's territory from space were far more shaken. The long dragons departing from major bases resembled a dense net covering the entire country. It was only at this moment that Western leaders truly realized just how terrifying the Dragon Nation could be once it erupted. A silent lion, once it roars, will surely shake the heavens and the earth. On Twitter, netizens from various countries who had previously been mocking the situation fell completely silent after seeing the magnificent video clips. Many years later, many foreigners who survived would look back on today's scene with deep emotion. On that day, the ancient Eastern nation awoke from its long slumber, causing other nations to tremble in fear. But the irony was that while other countries were exerting all their efforts to prepare for a world war initiated by the Dragon Nation did not care about them at all. From beginning to end, their enemy did not belong to this earth. An hour later, the central television of the Dragon Nation posted a video on social media platforms. The footage captured the military entering the defense zones as seen from a satellite. Accompanying the video was a single caption, "Where the spear points, the enemy shall perish." As soon as the news broke, it received countless likes and comments. What is the station implying? If there is a war, we must fight to win. Is a great war truly about to begin? Throughout that entire day, the people of the Dragon Nation engaged in heated discussions. According to data from various tracking platforms, the online activity index today was many times higher than usual. Across the internet, in addition to videos of the military entering defense zones, there were images of citizens spontaneously gathering essential supplies to send to military camps. Videos of people carrying sacks of rice and transporting cooking oil and vegetables once again shocked the people of other nations with the terrifying power of the Dragon Nation's unity. Alongside the movements of the Dragon Nation, other countries took retaliatory actions. For instance, the U.S. State Department publicly announced that in the coming days, it would dispatch a carrier strike group to the Cherry Blossom country to conduct military exercises. Following this announcement, the Cherry Blossom country immediately voiced its intent to cooperate with the United States in the drills to promote a positive international military environment. These statements left the Dragon Nation's netizens struggling to suppress their laughter. Out of the whole world, you're the least friendly ones, yet you dare talk about promoting a positive environment? Who are you trying to fool? Promptly, at 9 a.m. on September 1, 2025, by the Dragon Nation's calendar, the Mythic Anomalies Bureau posted on all platforms. With the unanimous agreement of the Cabinet, the Director of the Mythic Anomalies Bureau, and senior leadership, tomorrow shall be a national holiday for all sectors. Every citizen must remain indoors. Under no circumstances should anyone go outside. When this news broke, social media exploded once more. Hiss, is it about to start? Though I look forward to the holiday, this young lady feels very anxious about the future. Don't panic. Beautiful. Give me your address. This old man will come to protect you. What kind of time is this for you people to be joking around? Everyone was talking, their moods fluctuating wildly. Many scholars posted their views online, including one who received the support of the vast majority of netizens. In my opinion, everyone should just do their jobs well. Follow the nation's command. Do not panic, and do not hesitate. Have faith in the motherland. 5,000 years of history have passed. How many disasters have we faced? Our dragon nation still exists in this world. But what about the other ancient civilizations? The strongest thing about our Huaxia is not our 1.4 billion people, nor the unfathomable number of our soldiers. It is that we possess a brave heart that strives forward, capable of rising against the tide no matter the adversity. Half an hour later, the Mythic Anomalies Bureau released another heavyweight announcement. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, the Mythic Anomalies Bureau will hold a press conference directed at the entire nation, the entire cabinet, the director of the Mythic Anomalies Bureau, and the high-ranking leadership of the Dragon Nation will all attend. Furthermore, the most mysterious and powerful mythic special forces of the Dragon Nation will make their first appearance to receive their orders before departing to garrison key defense zones. At this point, netizens from both the Dragon Nation and abroad were stunned. The Dragon Nation had been incredibly ostentatious over the past 2 days. Their series of actions had shocked the world more times than anyone could count. Mythic special forces, the most mysterious and the strongest. Damn, does our country really have a special forces unit like that? Camping for this, camping +1, camping +1. 24. While the people of the Dragon Nation waited in anticipation, inside the White House in the United States, the white-haired president was flushed with rage, throwing a tantrum. Over the past few days, he didn't know how many times he had needed oxygen. His blood pressure rose so frequently that the medical team standing by trembled in fear, worried he might collapse at any moment. Mythic Special Forces? Shit! Are those agents all useless? Such vital information, and they still haven't found anything. Can anyone tell me what this so-called Mythic Special Forces actually is? Faced with the president's aggressive questioning, the U.S. military leaders looked at one another, all pretending they hadn't heard. Are you kidding? We're just as bewildered as you are. If you're asking me, who am I supposed to ask? At this moment, all Western countries became tense. To make a dragon nation, which had always been modest use words like most mysterious and most powerful, was enough to demonstrate the terrifying nature of these mythic special forces. Many nations began frantically mobilizing their armies, continuously setting up defensive lines for fear of being caught off guard by a sudden strike. Chapter 24. The Dragon Kingdom shall never yield inside the dormitory of the Dongfeng base. Tran Huyen waited in silence for the break of dawn. This would be the final time he purchased a gift pack from the game. Mythological Era, marking the moment the game officially closed its doors. Dragon Kingdom Calendar. Exactly midnight, September 2nd, 2025. The gift packs in the game shop refreshed once more. Notably, while the experience pills that could be manifested into reality still had a purchase limit, the allowance had been increased to 5 purchases. Each pack contained 200 experience pills, designed for players below level 50, to advance 10 levels. Without a moment's hesitation, Tran Huyen topped up his account and bought out all the newly refreshed packs. With these experience pills in hand, the Dragon Kingdom's chances of withstanding the advent of the mythological era would be slightly more certain. Once Tran Huyen completed his purchases, an ancient and majestic voice emanated from his phone. To the sole internal beta tester of Planet Blue, Tran Huyen, we thank you for your companionship over this period. Now, please provide your evaluation of the mythological era beta. As the voice faded, a series of evaluation options appeared on the screen, causing the corners of Tran Huyen's mouth to twitch. Impressive. They had already reached a high fantasy scenario, yet they still bothered with a game survey? Ultimately, Tran Huyen suppressed his conscience and selected 5 stars across the board, granting the beta version a perfect rating. Thank you for your evaluation. In gratitude for your high recognition of this beta, we are providing you with the following information. First, the mythological era will officially descend upon Planet Blue at exactly 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. There will be no omens prior to its arrival. Second, The monstrous beasts within the mythological era are divided between good and evil. If you wish to aid your country, you may attempt to contact and form alliances with friendly beasts. Third, the mythological era contains not only countless monstrous beasts, but also incredibly powerful alien races. To these alien races, humanity is nothing more than prey. Fourth, the alien races will not descend for 1 month. Therefore, noble beta tester, please utilize this 1-month window to rapidly strengthen yourself. Note: the complete feedback regarding your class will be transmitted to you 1 hour after the game closes. As the final word was spoken, thunder roared across the game interface, followed by a brilliant flash of light. The mythological era game disappeared from the phone without a trace. The gift packs Tran Huyen had purchased began to manifest within the room, one after another. However, Tran Huyen was in no state of mind to inspect them. He sat on the sofa, his expression grim. While the first 2 pieces of news were somewhat positive, the latter 2 were as dire as could be. Monstrous beasts were powerful, but they were still beasts. The low-level ones possessed intelligence far inferior to humans. Thus, as long as too many high-level beasts did not appear at once, Tran Huyen was confident he could handle them. But the alien races were another matter entirely. Though he did not yet know what the alien races of the mythological era looked like, anything capable of surviving in such a world was undoubtedly formidable. Once alien races arrived, combined with the beasts and the mutation of Planet Blue's native flora and fauna due to the revival of spiritual energy, would humanity even have a path to survival? Modern technology was potent, but conventional weaponry was only effective against targets below level 100. At the King Realm, only nuclear weapons posed a slight threat. Other weapons were useless, even against a stationary target. As for those at the True King rank or higher, nuclear bombs were mere toys to be molded at will. There is no choice but to risk everything. At the very least, before the final outcome is decided, the Dragon Kingdom shall never yield. Chapter: The Feedback of the Chaos Swordmaster. After a long silence, Tran Huyen narrowed his eyes, his resolute face tightening as a soft murmur escaped his lips. At present, Tran Huyen's most critical objective was to repel the waves of monstrous beasts that would arrive during the early stages of the mythological era's descent. Only by weathering that storm would he and the Long Kingdom even earn the right to consider the threat of the alien races that would follow. If they could not even withstand the monstrous beasts, there was no point in fretting over the alien races. A moment later, Tran Huyen summoned several members of the Mythic Squad. He ordered them to bring out the awakening stones to initiate the classes of the newly joined members. Furthermore, he entrusted Deputy Director Lam Kian Heap with the task of distributing experience pills to bolster the levels of the Mythic Squad's vast ranks. At this hour, the entire underground base was ablaze with light. Sleep was a luxury no one could afford. Everyone was swept up in the frantic tide of preparation. From the final inspections of defensive sectors to the replenishment of resources, everything required the coordination of the Mythic Special Bureau. When the mythological era descended, chaos was inevitable. Doomsday theories would likely run rampant. Even with grand armies standing guard, a lack of essential supplies would lead to riots, even in a nation with such high social cohesion as the Long Kingdom. When pushed to the absolute limits of hunger, there is no telling what a human being is capable of. Fortunately, since the inception of the Mythic Special Bureau, the Long Kingdom had been relentlessly stockpiling materials. For a short period, providing for the nation's populace would not be a significant issue. As they waited, time slipped away in silence. Finally, the complete feedback for Tran Huyen's Chaos Swordmaster class arrived. Boom! An endless torrent of power surged from the void, cascading violently toward Tran Huyen. His entire body was lifted into the air, suspended in a radiant, dazzling glow. Under the fluctuations of this terrifying energy, every object within Tran Huyen's quarters dissolved into ash. The shockwaves of power continued to ripple outward, permeating the entire underground base. Crash! With Tran Huyen's room as the epicenter, several adjacent rooms collapsed, one after another in a haze of dust and flying debris. Even the underground base, reinforced with specialized metals, could not withstand these tremors. Fortunately, as the personnel were currently stationed in the administrative and operational areas, no casualties occurred. Such a massive disturbance naturally drew the attention of everyone in the base. The members of the Mythic Squad were the first to arrive. Yet, the moment they stepped into the vicinity, they felt a crushing pressure as if a great mountain were bearing down upon them. Despite having reached level 50, they could not help but tremble under the weight of this aura. That is the director's room. Could it be that the director is undergoing a class awakening? Heavens, such a terrifying commotion. Just what kind of class did the director awaken? This power. It's far too terrifying. The members of the Mythic Squad stood agape, staring at the distant ruins and murmuring in shock, their faces etched with disbelief. Aside from the Mythic Squad, everyone else returned to your posts. Deputy Director Lam Kian Hiep rushed to the scene. Glancing at the gathering crowd, he barked a stern command. All Mythic Squad members, fan out. Establish a defensive perimeter and prevent the energy leak from collapsing the base. Understood. Following the order, the many members of the Mythic Squad moved instantly. They unleashed their own strength, erecting a massive barrier of light that completely enveloped the distant ruins. Only then did Lam Kian Heap let out a silent sigh of relief. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Lam Dong, he gazed toward the wreckage and asked in a low voice, "You have reached level 50 now. If you were to face the director in combat, how many moves do you think you could withstand?" Hearing this, a bitter smile played across Lam Dong's exquisite features. "Father, you overestimate me. Judging by the fluctuations the director is emitting, I suspect that even if the entire Mythic Squad joined forces, it wouldn't be enough to stop him from slaughtering us all." Chapter 25. Like a sword immortal descended to earth amidst the ruins. A brilliant radiance enveloped Tran Huyen's entire body as countless profound insights of the Sword Tao flooded into his mind. These insights felt as though they were innate, not the least bit foreign. On the contrary, they were as intimately familiar as if they were a part of his own body. A surging torrent of power continuously refined Tran Huyen's constitution, causing his bone density and the breadth of his meridians to increase manifold. In this single moment, 5 great talents converged upon a single form. Furthermore, Tran Huyen mastered and integrated the profound mysteries of the 10 professional skill systems he had just awakened, reaching a state of total comprehension. The set of divine armaments, specifically designed for a Chaos Swordmaster, which he had purchased previously, manifested out of thin air and automatically equipped themselves onto him. This set included the Chaos Emperor Dragon Sword, the Chaos Emperor Dragon Armor, and the Chaos Emperor Dragon Boots, all of which were of the peak Earth grade, corresponding to level 100. Boom! Lam Kian Heap and the others waiting outside the ruins suddenly heard a thunderous explosion ring in their ears. Before they could react, a figure soared upward from the wreckage, standing tall and imposing in the void. At that moment, Lam Kian Heap and the countless members of the Mythic Special Task Force were stunned into silence. Standing beside Lam Kian Heap, Lam Dong's beautiful eyes shimmered with a strange light, her heart pounding incessantly. She gazed infatuatedly at Tran Huyen as he hovered in mid-air, feeling as though both her person and her heart were about to fall for him completely. A majestic and domineering suit of red-gold battle armor encased Tran Huyen's handsome tall frame, while a red-gold dragon-patterned longsword circled his body. His entire being radiated a shimmering light, with countless sword phantoms manifesting behind his back. In this moment, Tran Huyen truly resembled a sword immortal who had descended to the mortal realm. A single glance from him was enough to make one tremble in awe. While everyone was still reeling from the shock, Tran Huyen retracted his aura and drifted gently to the ground, walking toward Lam Kian Heap's group. I didn't quite control my strength for a moment. This place, Do I need to pay for the damages? Pfft. Hearing Tran Huyen's words, Lam Dong could not help but let out a soft giggle. Lam Kian Heap and the members of the Mythic Special Task Force also struggled to suppress their smiles. Afterward, the group surrounded Tran Huyen and headed toward the Mythic Special Task Force's training hall. After several days of development, including Tran Huyen's parents and Lam Dong, the number of early awakened individuals had reached 1,500, and every person's level had reached level 50. Among them, there were 2 with mythic grade professions, Tran Huyen's parents. There were 45 with legendary grade professions, 490 with rare grade professions, 960 with advanced grade professions, and 5 with common grade professions. Currently, the total membership of the Mythic Special Task Force stood at 1,497. Within this number, 1,120 were combat types, 350 were support types, and 27 were lifestyle types. Though it was a slight pity, the 27 members who had awakened lifestyle professions were destined to serve as logistics personnel. For the immediate future, the Mythic Special Task Force would remain focused primarily on combat. Inside the training hall, Tran Huyen stood upon a high platform, looking down at the rows of Mythic Special Task Force members standing in straight lines. A look of satisfaction appeared on his face. He reflected for a moment before speaking in a resonant voice. I have decided to establish the Mythic Mobile Special Task Force under the codename Xianxia. The initial membership is temporarily set to Habin Vo and the 45 other legendary grade awakened individuals. Xianxia will be the true elite of the Mythic Special Task Force, responsible for rapid response, mobile coordination, guarding the capital's defense zones, and other heavy responsibilities. The remaining members, immediately following the conclusion of the press conference, will divide into 34 small teams and rush to garrison the 34 defense zones. Understood. Roars of affirmation echoed throughout the training hall. No one questioned Tran Huyen's decision. Within the current Mythic Special Task Force, Tran Huyen was their undisputed article of faith. Now, assemble at the logistics department to receive your armor and weapons. Understood. The armor for the Mythic Special Task Force was manufactured by the Weapons Research Division of the Mythic Unusual Affairs Bureau. Each suit weighed 500 pounds and was cast from a special metal. The armor was produced to a uniform standard, but the weapons were customized based on the specific professional characteristics of each individual. Furthermore, whether it was the armor or the weapons, all had been enchanted by Tran Lu Quan, significantly enhancing both defensive and offensive capabilities. Though Lam Dong was not a member of the Mythic Special Task Force, thanks to her early awakening, she also received a set of enchanted armor. As for her weapon, it was the Zhenwu Spirit Sword that Tran Huyen had initially purchased to build trust with the high-level officials of Long Kwok. In the early hours before dawn, everyone in the Mythic Unusual Affairs Bureau was busy preparing. Even Tran Huyen personally took his place at the Consent Center, this time to coordinate the entire plan. Although he desperately yearned to rely on the Enlightenment cushion to break through to the King Realm, time would not permit it. In the early stages of the Mythic Era's arrival, all of Long Kwok needed his protection. If he went into secluded cultivation now and something went wrong, he would become a criminal in the eyes of his country. At 3 o'clock in the morning, lights, sleepers, and night owls in various defense zones heard dull, rumbling roars. Peering through their windows, they discovered convoys of transport trucks entering the defense zones. These convoys stretched out like long dragons with no visible end, and the cargo within consisted primarily of food and essential supplies. Many curious people took photos of the scene with their phones and posted them online. It was then they discovered that residents in other defense zones had also posted photos with nearly identical content, endless lines of transport trucks. At 5:30 in the morning, Deputy Director Lam Kian Hiep took Tran Huyen's place at the command center. Meanwhile, Tran Huyen led Lam Dong, Old, Deep, Old Tran and many members of the Mythic Special Task Force onto a transport vehicle, heading toward Tianhai Airport to board a passenger plane for the capital. The roads were clear, and Tran Huyen's group quickly boarded the aircraft. The sun rose in the east, dyeing half the sky red. At exactly 7 o'clock in the morning, the entire citizenry of Long Quoc, regardless of age, turned on the central television channel, eating breakfast while waiting for the press conference to begin. Residents living near the city walls of the defense zones were astonished to find that columns of tanks had, at some unknown time, moved to the base of the walls, their muzzles aimed collectively at the sky. Simultaneously, the high walls were lined with Long Quoc soldiers holding firearms, standing as still as statues. Furthermore, citizens in every defense zone could hear the roar of fighter jets echoing through the air. Despite their intense curiosity, no one stepped out of their doors. They all followed the nation's instructions, staying obediently inside their homes. At the same time, from global leaders to the general public, regardless of time zones, everyone waited before their screens for the live broadcast. They understood clearly that this press conference by Long Quoc would represent the upcoming state of the world. Looking at Long Quoc's series of major maneuvers, this war was destined to be unavoidable. The only question was, which country would Long Quoc ultimately choose to unsheathe its blade against? By this time, the great hall of the people in the capital was fully prepared. Renowned hosts, such as Xiao Kang, Xiao Sa, and Xiao Qing, were leading camera crews through the halls, introducing the layout and preparations to the people of Long Quoc and the entire world watching through their screens. Chapter 26. Fellow Taoists, the day of enlightenment has arrived. Distinguished viewers, good morning. I am your host, Xiao Kong, Xiao Sa Qing. It is currently 7:45 a.m. on September 2nd, Beijing time. As you can see, the main gates of the Great Hall of the People have been closed, and armed forces are maintaining a strict perimeter outside the hall. The delegates are also taking their seats in an orderly fashion. As soon as these words were spoken, the comment section of the online live stream became as dense as clouds obscuring the sun. It's finally starting. This looks like a grand mobilization ceremony, doesn't it? I wonder who the country is planning to fight. Looking forward to the appearance of the most powerful and mysterious mythical special forces. Waiting +1. 10 minutes later, the vast space of the Great Hall of the People was filled to capacity. Except for the first 2 rows, nearly all the attendees had taken their positions. In the final 2 minutes, the entire cabinet, along with Tran Huyen and other high-ranking officials of the Long Kingdom, entered the hall one after another. The press conference of the Long Kingdom officially began. This press conference would later be hailed by people all over the world as the opening bell of a new era. It was also known as the final press conference, marking the intersection between the old age and the new. Because of this, the Long Kingdom would be honored by global humanity as the pioneer of the new era. Under the gaze of tens of thousands, the great leader stepped onto the high podium, his expression solemn and hallowed. He turned toward the microphone and spoke resonantly. Good morning, comrades. The Long Kingdom, and indeed every nation on this blue planet, is about to face an unprecedented upheaval. In this crisis, our Long Kingdom has prepared everything. I hope that no matter what happens next, everyone will not panic or fall into chaos. Trust in the nation, trust in the government, and trust in the military of the Long Kingdom. Through 8,000 years of glorious history, the Long Kingdom has endured countless trials and tribulations, and we have overcome them all. This time will be no exception. As his voice fell, the entire hall rose in unison to applaud, and the live stream rooms were flooded with praise. For the specific details, I would like to invite Comrade Tran Huyen, Director of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau of the Long Kingdom, to introduce them to everyone. Following this, the leader stepped down from the podium and returned to his seat, not forgetting to give Tran Huyen an encouraging look as the young man stood up. Soon after, Tran Huyen appeared, in the sight of the people across the country and the world, dressed in a Xianxia suit, looking handsome and resolute. This was Tran Huyen's first public appearance as director since the establishment of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau. Whoa! Is the director of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau really this young? My God, he's so handsome. Damn! My sisters and I can't handle this. Oh Lord, this Tran must surely be a genius. The domestic and international live streams were instantly filled with comments the moment Tran Huyen stepped onto the stage. Countless people were astonished by his youth and appearance. Even 99% of those present in the hall showed looks of amazement. Tran Huyen's identity had always been kept secret. Except for the top leadership and a few high officials, the rest were completely unaware of who the director of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau actually was. But today, they had officially met him, and they could not help but be shaken. At this moment, standing upon the high podium, Tran Huyen felt both immense glory and a heavy burden of responsibility. Good morning, comrades. I am Tran Huyen, director of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau. This may be the first time many of you have seen me, but that is fine. I hope that in the coming days you will see me appearing frequently. When Tran Huyen said this, many people looked puzzled, and various questions appeared on the live stream. Only the members of the cabinet, along with Lam Dong, Tran Huyen's parents, and those who knew the truth, remained silent. They all understood the hidden meaning behind Tran Huyen's words. Poor child, only in his early 20s and already shouldering such a massive responsibility. Regardless of whether he can hold the line, he will still be a great hero of the Long Kingdom. The second leader, sitting next to the great leader, looked at Tran Huyen with eyes full of kindness and spoke softly and solemnly. The great leader did not speak, but he nodded gently, watching Tran Huyen on the stage with a warm gaze. Under the attention of 10,000 eyes, Tran Huyen spoke slowly again, but his words were like a thunderclap in a clear sky. A week ago, the Otherworld Detector, researched with the full effort of the Long Kingdom Academy of Sciences, was born. During the testing process, the Academy of Sciences accidentally discovered that an other world named the Mythical Era is about to descend upon the blue planet, forming a spatial tunnel. After rigorous testing and experimentation, the Academy of Sciences finally determined that the detector's results were accurate. 1 week later, which is at 12 o'clock noon today, the Mythical Era Otherworld will officially connect its spatial tunnel to the blue planet. This was information that the leadership of the Long Kingdom had discussed and agreed to announce, the fundamental purpose being to protect Tran Huyen's special identity. As for whether others believed it or not, that was their business. After all, the Long Kingdom did truly possess an otherworld detector. The delegates who did not know the truth were stunned. The people of the Long Kingdom were stunned. The leaders of various countries and the global populace were all dumbfounded. What was that? I didn't hear that wrong, did I? Do you think in this setting, Director Tran Huyen has the leisure to joke with you, meaning there really is another world? Oh my God, the Long Kingdom is truly incredible. I'm so proud. Who would have thought the Long Kingdom Academy of Sciences would silently drop such a shocking card? Aren't you guys worried about the consequences when the other world descends? What is there to fear? Didn't you see the country has already prepared? In facing the other world, our Long Kingdom is already a long step ahead of the rest of the world. In the central live stream room, countless comments appeared, and every citizen discussed the news with heat and excitement. Not only that, but foreign netizens were also discussing it frantically. Shit! I'm certain I'm dreaming. The Mythical Era Otherworld? Oh my God. Look at the Long Kingdom, then look back at our own country. What on earth are those scientists eating to work like that? Is my tax money only for feeding a bunch of useless people? Fuck. On the high podium, Tran Huyen continued. Through a series of rigorous probes, the Academy of Sciences discovered that this mythical era is a vast world where exotic beasts and foreign races coexist, a fantasy world just like those in novels. In that world, there are terrifying exotic beasts hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of meters long. Once the spatial tunnel with the blue planet is formed, these beasts will invade. This is an unprecedented crisis, but at the same time, it is an unprecedented opportunity. Through our testing, we discovered that after the mythical era comes into contact with the blue planet, the phenomenon of spiritual chi restoration will occur. At that time, a strange object called an awakening stone will appear. Humans who come into contact with an awakening stone will awaken to various professions. After awakening, the human physique will become much stronger. Furthermore, we can also master mystical powers like those in novels, including but not limited to various types of rule-based powers. At this point, the entire Great Hall of the People fell into absolute silence. Only Tran Huyen's voice echoed. Everyone was stunned, their mouths agape at the terrifying information contained within his words. Even the live stream channels did not show a single comment. If one didn't know better, they would have thought it was a network crash. Holy hell! I believed in science all my life, and suddenly it turns into high fantasy? Fantasy it is. Fellow Taoists, the day of enlightenment has arrived. Chapter 27. The world watches. Long Quoc unrivaled compared to these opportunities. Shouldn't you all be worried about the impending crisis? Those strange beasts, hundreds or even thousands of meters tall with our current level of technology. Can we even handle them? What is there to fear? Have faith in the country. Have faith in the soldiers of Long Quoc. Exactly. Haven't you seen that the state is already fully prepared? I apologize for my previous doubts regarding our nation. Apology +1. While the netizens of Long Quoc were buzzing with excitement, the citizens of other nations had completely erupted in chaos. Fuck! What the hell is our country doing? Why haven't we started preparing yet? Shit, the apocalypse is here. Let's all just die together. Ha ha ha. Oh my god, class awakenings. I want that kind of power. As the common people of various nations vented their emotions, the high-level leadership of those countries, after a brief and stunned silence, immediately took emergency action. Even the Western powers were no exception. Though many grumbled that Long Quoc had waited until the last moment to go public with this information, not a single person's, nor a single nation, doubted the truth of Long Quoc's words. They could belittle or curse Long Quoc, but they could never deny the fact that Long Quoc was a global superpower. To be more precise, rather than simply trusting Long Quoc, they believed that a major power standing in the absolute spotlight of the world would never lie in such a global context. This was not just recognition and respect for a great nation. It was recognition and respect for their own survival. Therefore, at this moment, nations across the globe were doing everything in their power to prepare. Even if there were only a few short hours left, any preparation was better than none. Never underestimate any nation. As the saying goes, when a country exerts its full strength to accomplish a single task, the resulting burst of energy exceeds all imagination. On the high podium, Tran Huyen spoke with a solemn expression and a resonant voice. Next, I invite you all to move to Tianmen, to join the people of the entire nation in reviewing the strongest mythical special forces of Long Quoc today. A special note. Every single member of the mythical special forces has already undergone a class awakening. After finishing his sentence, Tran Huyen stepped down from the podium and departed with the cabinet members and senior leaders. Simultaneously, the attending delegates were guided out of the Great Hall of the People by staff members. However, Tran Huyen's final words left everyone present stunned, their minds unable to find peace for a long time. Not only them, but social media also exploded like boiling water because of that final remark. Even though I lack culture, one holy crap is enough to travel the world. Nothing more to say. Long Quoc is unrivaled. While the people of Long Quoc cheered in joy, they were also eagerly awaiting the appearance of the mythical special forces. Similarly, people all over the world were filled with anticipation. Various countries even urgently organized groups of scientists, attempting to study the power of those called awakened. At the very least, they wanted to use this to judge exactly how powerful the mythical era would be. Behind the hall, Tran Huyen bid farewell to the cabinet leaders and senior officials to put on his war armor. This time, he would appear as the final anchor. This move was a collective decision by the entire cabinet and the leaders who understood the situation. They wanted to utilize Tran Huyen's supreme strength to instill confidence in the entire populace. Facing the invasion of a powerful and mysterious otherworldly realm, the absence of a spiritual pillar could easily lead to instability. The evidence was already there. Long Kwok's recent movements alone had triggered a surge of crime in several countries, giving their leaders massive headaches. Even as Long Kwok held its press conference and the news spread, several nations immediately saw a proliferation of doomsday cults and rhetoric. People were spiraling into hysteria, and major crimes were cropping up like mushrooms after rain. Thus, for a nation, especially one about to face a great catastrophe, a spiritual pillar was absolutely essential. And Tran Huyen was the spiritual pillar that the high-level leadership of Long Kwok had intentionally pushed forward. On the other side, under the guidance of the staff, the delegates had arrived at the ramparts of the Tiananmen Gate. Standing at the center were the cabinet leaders of Long Kwok and the heads of various departments. Those with sharp eyes noticed that the young and mysterious director of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau had disappeared. Although chairs had been placed on the ramparts, not a single person sat down. Instead, everyone stood at the edge, gazing out into the distance. What surprised and puzzled them was that, aside from a few armed personnel on guard duty, there was no sign of any military force on the square. The mysterious and powerful mythical special forces were nowhere to be seen. At that moment, Tran Lu Quan, who held the position of head of the enchantment team of the Mythical Abnormalities Bureau, wearing a Zhongshan suit, ran from one side of the square to the very center. He faced the leaders on the wall, raised his hands in a salute, and shouted, "Reporting to the leader, the Mythical Special Forces have finished assembling. Awaiting your instructions. Begin." Understood. Immediately, all the camera lenses installed on the wall were aimed precisely at the square, creating a 360-degree view without any blind spots. The entire citizenry of Long Kwok and people across the globe held their breath, watching in anticipation. "Arise, ye who refuse to be slaves." Along with the majestic and stirring sounds of the national anthem, figures descended from the distance, treading upon the very air. Their silver-brown war armor gleamed brilliantly under the sun, and the powerful aura erupting from each member of the Mythical Special Forces caused the skies above the square to churn into a violent storm. Leading them were the 40-plus members of the newly established 6-Q squad, along with Tran Huyen's secretary, Lam Dong. They hovered in neat formation in the air above the square. Professional skills erupted one after another as the sky filled with the glint of blades and the shadows of swords. In that instant, everyone was dazed. Whether they were the people of Long Kwok or citizens of other nations, they all stood frozen like statues. Boom! A thunderous explosion, like a crack of divine lightning, suddenly echoed across the sky of the capital. Immediately following, a radiant pillar of light poured down from the heavens. Tran Huyen, clad in his war armor and radiating an awe-inspiring majesty, stood tall within the pillar of light. Behind him, a sword shadow hundreds of meters long manifested, resembling an invincible sword immortal descending to the mortal realm. At this moment, any citizen in the capital who simply looked up could see that terrifying phantom blade. Now, the people of the nation and the world were shocked beyond measure. Though Tran Huyen and the others had not yet engaged in actual combat, the sheer power they displayed was enough for anyone to sense their overwhelming strength. That heroic, godlike posture was etched deeply into the minds of everyone watching. Many years later, this final parade of the old era would be called the foundation stone for the rise of Long Kwok by humanity. Simultaneously, it marked the beginning and the ascension of the Long Kwok mythical era. The parade and the final press conference concluded with Tran Huyen's speech. At 12 noon today, the mythical era will descend. At that time, I request all citizens to follow commands, Stay indoors and absolutely do not venture outside. Regarding daily necessities, specialized personnel will deliver them directly to your door. Furthermore, I ask the entire nation not to panic. Have faith in the country, have faith in the soldiers of Long Kwok, and have faith in the mythical special forces. In this great upheaval, the youth of our generation, like our predecessors, shall not fear hardship and shall strive bravely. I believe that as long as the people of the entire nation stand united like a wall of iron and bronze, Long Kwok will surely prevail. Chapter 28. The era descends, the sole pure land. The press conference had concluded, but the impact it generated was nothing short of earth-shattering. In the United States, at Harvard University, a top-tier prestigious institution, the halls were filled not only with the local elite of the Stars and Stripes, but also with brilliant minds from across the globe. At that moment, inside a study hall, the space was originally silent as students buried their heads in research. However, there were still those whispering sweet nothings. Miss Lam, your Eastern nation has sealed its borders. It looks like you'll have to stay here forever. Sitting beside him was a girl wearing heavy makeup. She nudged him coquettishly. Darling, I long for this place, for this atmosphere of freedom. To be able to stay here permanently is my honor. Indeed, the United States is not only the center of the blue star, but the center of the universe. Only here can we achieve true progress. At a desk further up, another overseas student from the Long Kingdom turned around, speaking with an air of arrogance. Shit. Look at this, everyone. Right then, a young white man kicked open the door of the study hall, rushing in with his phone in hand. He immediately connected his phone to the room's projector. The video playing was the recently concluded press conference of the Long Kingdom. Oh my God, the era of mythology, the descent of another world? Shit, is this for real? In an instant, every student in the study hall was shaken. They stood up one by one, shaking their heads in disbelief as if they were losing their minds. It's absolutely confirmed. Our country is also preparing. The military at all major bases has been mobilized, and even the nuclear missile silos have been opened. Following the words of the young man who had burst in, the students erupted into screams once more, their faces a mixture of shock and terror. Damn it! How can the Long Kingdom be so strong? Why did they get the head start? We must obtain class awakenings too. We must have powerful strength. As the students shouted, the overseas students of the Long Kingdom who hadn't managed to return home turned pale, their hearts filled with a deep, gut-wrenching regret. As if remembering something, the girl with the heavy makeup frantically pulled out her phone and called her father. Dad, I want to come home. Please find someone to bring me back quickly. The other end of the line was silent for a long moment before a roar erupted. When I told you to come back before, you insisted on staying for that atmosphere of freedom. It's too late to want to come back now. Even if the great Jade Emperor himself descended, you wouldn't be able to come back. After finishing his roar, the man on the other end sighed, his voice softening. Go back to your dormitory now. Buy as much food as you can and hide. Oh, right. Your mother and I. We plan to have another child. You, take care of yourself. When the man hung up, the girl slumped into her chair, her eyes vacant. Her heavily made-up face was now masked with absolute remorse. Lam, why are you just standing there? Quickly, organize the other students who didn't return like you and speak up together. As long as our numbers are great enough, the Long Kingdom won't dare to ignore us. They can't withstand the pressure of public opinion. If you succeed, I hope you can take me with you to the Long Kingdom. Seeing the girl dazed, the white youth beside her gave her a gentle shove, speaking in a low voice. Right. Snapping back to reality. The girl hurriedly took her phone and posted a message in the Longing for Freedom group. This group consisted entirely of overseas students from the Long Kingdom, specifically those who had chosen to stay in the United States after the Long Kingdom's recall. Before long, a video she posted appeared on Weibo. The content was tragic and heart-wrenching, perfectly portraying the moving story of a patriotic student who was too busy with her studies to return home in time. Is your studying more important than the nation's call? Get lost, you fool. Keep longing for your freedom then. The Long Kingdom doesn't need people like you. Yesterday you were indifferent. Today we are beyond your reach. And now you want to cling to us? There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Within minutes of being posted, the Weibo entry was swarmed by netizens from the Long Kingdom. After being subjected to a barrage of insults, Weibo directly banned the girl's account, receiving countless praises for doing so. Aside from the netizens who were idle at home, the people of the Long Kingdom no longer cared about the noise online. Every Long Kingdom soldier stationed in defense zones was armed to the teeth, standing on high alert. Countless conventional weapons were primed, ready to fire at a moment's notice. Simultaneously, the members of the Mythology Special Task Force were divided into 34 squads, racing to garrison the 34 defense zones. If any exotic beasts invaded, they would be the first sharp blade to strike back. Tran Huyen and the Xianxia squad were currently guarding the imperial capital's defense zone. Long Kingdom Calendar, 11:30 a.m. September 2, 2025. Woo-woo! Ear-piercing sirens echoed across the entire territory of the Long Kingdom. The entire nation entered a state of Level 1 alert. All flights were suspended. Even fighter jets remained in a state of readiness on the ground, rather than appearing in the sky. The Long Kingdom's naval fleets were fully loaded with ammunition, encircling the coastline to form a steel wall upon the sea. The nuclear missile silos hidden within secret bases opened one after another, standing ready to deal with an unpredictable disaster. At this moment, the entire Long Kingdom populace were in their throats. They were both anxious and expectant, hoping the nation could withstand the catastrophe and lead the Long Kingdom into a new era. Long Kingdom is invincible. Mythology Special Task Force is invincible. Director Tran Huyen is invincible. Sending our regards to all the Long Kingdom soldiers guarding the front lines. At this time, netizens from the Long Kingdom simultaneously swarmed the comment section of the Mythology Special Affairs Bureau's Bureau, Weibo. The rows of responses were astonishingly neat and unified, causing blood to boil with fervor. Elsewhere, countries across the world also activated Level 1 alerts. Entire militaries were mobilized to guard major cities, and the most modern conventional weapons were brought out. At this point, no country dared to hide anything. They exerted nearly all their strength to resist the impending disaster. Of course, there were also small nations that knew they could not hold out. They completely abandoned resistance, immersing themselves in a final bout of hedonism. Years later, a reporter posted a detailed record of everything that happened when the era of mythology descended on social media. The record read as follows. Long Kingdom Calendar. Exactly 12 p.m., September 2, 2025, the era of mythology descended. In the sky, a gargantuan pitch-black rift was torn open. Infinite spiritual energy erupted from the fissure like a cascading galaxy. The entire blue star shook. Waves surged and tempests raged without end. One after another, massive shadows escaped from the rift, scattering across the blue star. Immediately following that, the catastrophe began. A giant beast over 100 meters tall, shaped like an ape, appeared in a city in the United States. It ignored the rain of bombs and bullets, rampaging frantically. After causing tens of thousands of casualties, it was finally destroyed by 123 cruise missiles. According to statistics, in the early stages of the exotic beast invasion when the era of mythology descended, the global death toll reached tens of millions. Cities destroyed were beyond counting. The sole pure land was the mysterious and ancient Long Kingdom standing firm in the east. Chapter 29. Crushed with a single step. At this moment, all of humanity looked up at the pitch-black rift stretching across the sky, stunned and unable to regain their senses for a long time. After a brief moment of horror, Tran Huyen immediately regained his composure. Everyone, maintain communication. Report any abnormal situations immediately. At the same time, nations across the world reacted, on one hand cursing incessantly, and on the other, bracing their defenses in tension. Especially When they saw those massive shadows scattering in all directions, the hearts of world leaders tightened, silently praying that disaster would not strike their own countries. Hubei Province Defense Zone. Along the city walls near Xianxia, 5 members of the Mythical Special Forces, along with other soldiers, were patrolling tensely. Bring, bring. The urgent ring of a phone echoed from the pocket of Captain Ngo Tan Hu. He pulled it out to answer. Comrade Ngo Tan Hu, my department has detected abnormal energy fluctuations within Xianxia. I have notified Director Tran Huyen. I suggest you maintain high alert. Understood. Ngo Tan Hu's expression grew solemn. After hanging up, he scanned the rows of soldiers on the wall and shouted, "Attention, everyone! Raise your weapons. Prepare to engage the enemy." "Yes, sir." The roar was like thunder in their ears as everyone simultaneously raised their weapons. Additionally, dozens of machine guns were manned, and missile launchers at the Hubei military base were primed to fire. Elsewhere, inside this newly established headquarters of the Mythical Special Bureau in the imperial capital, Tran Huyen and his team stood before a massive screen. The screen showed a live satellite feed of the situation at Xianxia. Deep within Xianxia, a ferocious giant serpent, over 200 meters long and pitch black, was charging toward the Hubei defense zone with a momentum that seemed ready to crush everything in its path. The vast vitality, radiating from the densely populated area, acted like a lighthouse in the dark of night to these monstrous beasts, exerting an incredibly powerful attraction. Director, in your opinion, what level is this beast? Can the Hubei defense zone stop it? Vice Director Lam Qian Hiep, who had just returned from the Dongfang military base, looked at the ferocious serpent on the screen and asked Tran Huyen. As he spoke, several officials surrounding Tran Huyen also turned to look at him. A size within 50 meters is a beast below level 30. Within 200 meters is below level 50. 500 meters is below level 100. Based on that, this serpent should be above level 50, but below level 70. Of course, this standard isn't absolute, but it allows for a rough estimation of their strength. Tran Huyen continued. I will head to the Hubei defense zone now. Continue monitoring. Do not focus solely on Hubei. The entire territory of the Long Kingdom must be under strict surveillance. Understood. Under their watchful eyes, Tran Huyen turned and left. Shortly after, those inside the headquarters heard a series of thunderous booms echoing from the sky. On the city walls of the Hubei defense zone, the soldiers could not help but gasp as they saw the appearance of the ferocious serpent. Despite their mental preparation, they were still terrified by its colossal size. Prepare, fire. Ngo Tan Hu's booming voice rang out, snapping the soldiers back to their senses as they immediately opened fire. Bang, bang, bang. Streams of firepower spewed from the walls like a torrential rain, pouring onto the massive body of the serpent and sending sparks flying. Boom! Simultaneously, dozens of tanks behind the wall fired in unison. Shells tore through the air, streaking over the wall like falling stars, heading straight for the beast. In an instant, the area where the serpent stood was engulfed in flames and smokes, accompanied by the endless roar of explosions. The terrifying shockwave kicked up clouds of earth and dust. Roar, an ear-splitting roar, echoed in all directions. Residents, living near the wall, were terrified by the sound. They suppressed their inner anxiety, not daring to move lest they cause more trouble for the country. On the wall, the soldiers watched the enraged, unscathed black serpent charging toward them, their faces filled with horror. Such high-intensity attacks had only knocked off a few scales. At this moment, everyone felt fortunate that the Long Kingdom had prepared in advance. Otherwise, if they had encountered such an attack without warning, the casualties would have been catastrophic. All members of the Mythical Special Forces, follow me. At some point, Ngo Tan Hu had gripped a 2-meter-long greatsword. With a roar, he lunged forward like an arrow from a bow, his blade swinging continuously to unleash arcs of sword chi. The other 4 members followed suit. Boom! Boom! Powerful professional skills exploded against the black serpent. Under the siege of the 5 level 50 members, the serpent's momentum was halted. Though their levels were lower than the beasts, their coordinated assault managed to inflict damage. On the wall, the soldiers watched Tran Huyen and his comrades fight with peerless bravery. Their eyes filled with admiration. As soldiers of the Long Kingdom, they feared no enemy. Their only fear was that they lacked the strength to protect their people and their motherland. On the battlefield, Tran Huyen's group had exhausted their trump cards. Though they could wound the serpent, they had no way to fully defeat it. Driven by pain, the monster grew even more furious. Its massive tail whipped down like a steel flail, forcing the group to dodge frantically. A single strike from a serpent this size could shatter a hill. Although their physiques had significantly strengthened after awakening, none of them wanted to test that blow. High above, Tran Huyen stood silently, looking down at the battle. He was in no hurry to intervene. So long as safety was guaranteed, it was essential for the mythical special forces to train more and accumulate experience against mythical beasts. For the Long Kingdom to grow strong and endure the mythical era, it could not rely on him alone. Only when the entire nation grew strong together would it possess true power. If he were the only reliance, what would happen if something befell him? Would the Long Kingdom collapse? Though he had gained a head start, he was not invincible. He had only reached level 100. He hadn't even broken through to the King realm, and in the mythical era, those stronger than him were countless. Boom! Just as Tran Huyen's group was about to lose their footing, Tran Huyen moved. He made no wasted motion, simply lifting his left foot and stomping down hard. Boom! Instantly, the sky resounded with a dry crack of air. A torrential surge of power poured down, manifesting into a colossal foot like the foot of a god descending from the heavens. Roar! Sensing the terrifying pressure from above, the serpent craned its neck and let out a heart-wrenching roar. A glint of human-like horror flashed in its blood-red eyes. Its tail swept upward, trying to block the descending stomp. However, Tran Huyen was at the peak of level 100. How could the beast possibly withstand him? Crash! In an instant, the serpent was struck. Its massive body was driven deep into the earth, the ground collapsing into a crater filled with hot, steaming blood. With a single step, the serpent that had stymied Tran Huyen's group and high-tech weaponry was completely obliterated. Gasp! Is that the director of the Mythical Special Bureau? Heavens, he truly is as powerful as the rumors say. That the Long Kingdom has Tran Huyen is a great blessing. On the wall, the soldiers who had never met Tran Huyen stared, wide-eyed, gasping in shock, their faces filled with awe. Chapter 30. 5 zones under attack, the sea-rending demonic flood dragon. Amidst the thunderous cheers, Tran Huyen extended an arm, manifesting a colossal hand of energy that dragged the carcass of the pitch-black serpent onto the fortress walls. Tran Huyen and the others, seeing this, hurried forward to greet Tran Huyen. This beast's body contains formidable power. Have men process it and distribute it to the soldiers for food. Remember, ordinary soldiers must not consume too much at once. About 100 grams per meal is sufficient. Hearing Tran Huyen's instructions, the expressions of Tran Huyen and his subordinates turned solemn. They replied in unison. Understood. You performed reasonably well, but there is still much to improve. In that situation just now, you could have joined forces to cast an energy shield, halting the beast outside the walls. You then could have utilized artillery fire to deplete its strength, only surging forward once it was exhausted. At these words, Tran Huyen's group showed visible shame, each bowing their heads, not daring to utter a word. Very well, I am not rebuking you. I only wish to remind you that human intellect is our most powerful weapon. You must learn to leverage your strengths, rather than pitting your weaknesses against the enemy's strengths. Understood. Seeing this, Tran Huyen saw soldiers who were looking at him with fervent passion. He spoke in a resonant voice. You are all the future of the Long Kingdom. While you protect the people behind you, I also hope you can protect yourselves. Do not worry about ammunition. As long as the enemy appears, aim straight for the target and strike with everything you have. Yes, leader. At that moment, every soldier present shouted in unison, their voices shaking the very earth and sky. They looked up at Tran Huyen with reverence, as if gazing upon their own faith, as if gazing upon the only God of the Long Kingdom. Director, the 5 major defense zones Tianhai, the northeast, Inner Mongolia, Thanhai, and Xinjiang are all under attack by beasts. The situation is extremely critical. At this moment, a hurried voice came through Tran Huyen's earpiece, causing his expression to shift slightly. Hold the line. Leaving only that command. Tran Huyen soared into the sky like a meteor, streaking across the firmament, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. With the director here, our Long Kingdom will surely remain safe and sound. No Than Hu declared with conviction as he watched Tran Huyen depart. The soldiers behind him did not speak, but their eyes were filled with agreement. As Tran Huyen accelerated toward the Tianhai defense zone, he asked, "What is the current status?" The liaison at the Mythic Anomalies Bureau headquarters immediately replied, "While you were traveling to the Nyak province defense zone, the 5 major defense zones were attacked simultaneously. Each zone has at least 3 beasts, with Tianhai facing the most 5 creatures, all exceeding 300 meters in size. The Zishtu squad has split into 5 teams and rushed to the zones to engage. Secretary Lam is currently fighting in Tianhai." Tran Huyen's face darkened as he asked, "How is the battle progressing?" "It is fierce. With fire support, they are still holding on for the time being." Hearing this, Tran Huyen did not respond further, but the speed beneath his feet increased instinctively, causing the sky to ring with the thunderous booms of the sonic barrier being torn asunder. Meanwhile, outside the Tianhai defense zone, a grand and violent battle was unfolding. Atop the walls, fully armed soldiers manned guns that spat out roaring dragons of fire. Behind the walls, lines of tanks fired in unison. And in front of the fortress, 9 figures clad in battle armor were unleashing strikes of terrifying power. Their opponents were 5 titanic beasts over 300 meters tall, 2 giant serpents, 2 demonic apes, and a colossal lizard. All were hideous in appearance, and every move they made caused the ground to shatter. At a size of 300 meters, their level was at least 70 or higher, possessing power far beyond that of ordinary beasts. Because of this, Lam Dong and the members of the Zishtu squad did not dare to charge into direct melee combat. Instead, they chose to defend before the walls, coordinating with artillery fire to stall the advance. As awakened individuals of legendary professions, the combat strength of Lam Dong's group was certainly not ordinary, but that power could only be maintained within certain limits. In terms of individual strength, Lam Dong's team could handle a beast below level 60 alone without issue. Together, the 9 of them could even take down 1 or 2 level 70 beasts. But this time, they were facing 5 creatures of level 70 or higher. Given those numbers, unless the situation became truly desperate, they did not want to risk a reckless gamble. A single mistake that allowed someone to be surrounded would mean being torn apart before anyone could provide rescue. Boom! The continuous deafening explosions made every resident in the Tianhai defense zone feel the earth tremble. Some elderly Buddhist believers could not help but kneel before the statues in their homes to pray. Meanwhile, many hot-blooded youths stood on their balconies clutching kitchen knives. If Tianhai truly fell, they were determined to contribute what little strength they had. They refused to sit and wait for death, and they certainly did not want to watch the soldiers protecting them fight alone. Roar! Just then a world-shaking roar erupted across the battlefield. A horrific shockwaves swept through the Tianhai defense zone in a visible ripple, shattering every window in the nearby buildings. Immediately following, a massive beast over 400 meters long poked its head out from the mist. Its terrifying visage and cold, blood-red eyes caused Lam Dong and the soldiers present to feel a bone-chilling dread. The sea-rending demonic flood dragon. Seeing the beast's form, the faces of Lam Dong and the Zishtu squad members changed drastically. A flicker of despair involuntarily rose in their eyes. The sea-rending demonic flood dragon was a beast recorded in the Encyclopedia of Anomalies. Rumored to possess a trace of the bloodline of the mythic grade beast, the Azure Jade Demonic Dragon. It was born with the strength of level 30, and even without cultivation, it would reach level 80 upon maturity. Among beast tribes with a base limit of level 100, the sea-rending demonic flood dragon tribe ranked at least in the upper middle tier. While Lam Dong's group was still paralyzed with shock, the sea-rending demonic flood dragon opened its cavernous, blood-red maw and unleashed a flood dragon's breath. The breath, containing immense power, caused the very air to warp and twist the moment it appeared. Quickly, join forces for defense. With those words, all members of the Xianxia squad dared not delay. They unleashed their strongest techniques to intercept the breath while pouring all their strength into a defensive barrier. Rumble. However, in the face of this sea-rending demonic flood dragon, which was nearing level 100, the strength of Lam Dong's group was simply insufficient. Their attacks and defenses were easily crushed. The horrific force slammed into their bodies, causing them to cough up mouthfuls of fresh blood simultaneously. They were sent flying back like cannonballs, crashing into the fortress walls and creating deep craters. "Damn it! All artillery units, blow that thing to hell!" The defending general roared his command. Instantly, heavy machine guns, autocannons, tanks, and various firearms spat fire relentlessly. An endless rain of shells poured down upon the sea-rending demonic flood dragon and the remaining beasts.